Good evening, everyone. So, I welcome you all to this virtual meeting on how to crack ESA 3.0 assessment test organized by Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, hosted by J&K branch of NIRC of ICI. So, I, Vineet Kohli, Secretary, on behalf of J&K branch of NIRC, welcome you all to this VCM. With this, we have Chairman of J&K branch, CA Nakul Saraf with us. I would like to call him on the mic so that to present a welcome note. So, Mr. Nakulji, please give a welcome address.
Thank you, Vineetji. I hope I am audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. So, good evening to all the members present here. To begin with, I would like to thank the Digital Accounting and Assurance Board for taking such a wonderful initiative by organizing this VCM on how to crack ESA 3.0 assessment test. I would like to thank the chairman of DAB, CA Charanjot Singh Nandaji, and Vice Chairman CA Dayanivas Sharma for taking this great initiative. I think they are not here right now. In addition, I would like to welcome our eminent speakers for today's program, Dr. Saurabh Maheshwari ji and Dr. Kapil Suri ji, who are expert in this field and will brief our members regarding the information system audit process. And further, the digital accounting for deliberating and initiating solutions for accounting and assurance issues in digital world, and I think it is doing great in this field. Now, without taking much time, I would request Vineet ji to further take up the proceedings.
Thank you, Nakulji. I would like to thank CA Charanjot Singh Nanda, Chairman, Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, in his absentia. We have two eminent speakers with us, Dr. Saurabh Maheshwari, who will be taking the first session. So I would take the privilege to introduce Dr. Saurabh Maheshwari. Dr. Saurabh Maheshwari is an educational strategist, national trainer, national awardee, author and a poet, career and a startup mentor, life coach, IS auditor, data analyst, political researcher, academician. So he has done his BE IT from Manipal University, BA Engineering, Literature and Economics from Kota University, MTech Information System, IIT Delhi, MBA from IASE University, LLB from Kota University, ex-MBA Digital Marketing from IMT Ghaziabad, PhD System Development and Data Analytics from Education Management, USA. He is a director in WSIC Consultants, Independent External Advisor, 21K School, Career Point University, Order Institutions. He is a director in Business Development, SARAS 3D EdTech Private Limited, Startup Mentor, SGT University, Atal Community Innovation Center. He is a national trainer, ICAI, having 11 plus years of experience and taken 200 batches in 50 plus cities, 1000 plus IS auditors. With this, I would like to call Dr. Saurabh Maheshwari to please start a session.
Thank you, Vineetji. Thank you very much for such a detailed introduction. So let me start the session, and before doing so, again, it's a great effort by DAB and the entire institute to organize such a informative sessions for the participants who have missed out the physical connect and might have lost the entire technical connect also for clearing DISA. And thanks, Vineetji, for hosting these kind of sessions. I expect the participants to join, or maybe a recorded session may be helpful for them. So it's hardly less than around 12 hours left out for examination. So seriousness, I think, is there in the rooms when they are studying themselves. Anyway, so to start with session, because it's hardly 1.5 hours we have to involve with each other, and the prima focus for next 1.5 hours with me and my co-faculty, Mr. Kapil Suri sir, who is also here in the group, and he will be taking care from module 4 to 6. So I'll be here talking about module 1 to 3. So we will be talking, and this particular presentation, Viniji, if you want, I can share with you on WhatsApp because my number is there with you. So I can share this on WhatsApp so that you can share it with the participants as well. This I have specially been crafted for these kind of revision modules only.
Okay.
So to begin with, we'll be talking about these 3 modules, and in technicalities, we'll be covering more than 50% of the entire weightage of DISA 3.0 exam pattern, which includes module 1 as 18%, module 2 as 16%, and module 3 as again 18%. I will be talking about few specific topics, although I have nutshelled every part of the module in my presentation, but I will talk about few specific topics, and then around 10-15 questions from each particular module, so that it becomes sum up. And I will also let you know that what is the process of solving down a question, what are the step-by-step mechanisms for making sure that question is understandable by a participant, and they must be able to apply their auditing logic and a bit of IT logic as well to solve out these questions. Fine. So it's not a rocket science. IS audit, it is just an auditing perspective from technical angle. So just increase your technical terminologies dictionary inside your brain, and the IT becomes a free-flowing subject for you all. So the module 1, which is related to information system audit process, it typically talks about what the audit process is, how an auditor needs to be engaged for an IS audit, what are the mechanisms for conducting an IS audit, or you can say phases of conducting an IS audit, what are the tools and techniques which can be used for it, and certain other standards which will be followed in module 2. So just to tell you, when you talk about IS audit, the concept of IS audit revolves around IT. Fine. So IT includes computer systems, information. So these are the 2 core aspects. So computer system becomes device, and information systems becomes a valuable output which comes out from the device after we process some things. So in totality, that becomes what? The information system. Okay, so information system is nothing. It is actually a computer system which is generating information for business processes or business organizations. Correct? What is business process? So business process is a systematic flow of step-by-step things which is being executed in an organization to generate some valuable output. So every process is a business process if it is valuable, if it is giving some sort of value to the system. May include suppose a logistic process or a procurement process or a production process or a billing process, whatever. So it's a process because it includes systematic steps, and a process has a well-defined input and a well-defined output. So whenever we are talking about information system from the business perspective, you need to know that any business process which is not syncing and generating certain valuable output needs to be removed, or maybe an IS auditor has the responsibility for filtering out those processes as well. What is the automation part? So although the process was being conducted or processes are into the business operations from last around hundreds of years, but now with the help of technology, we are into a process of automating them. Correct? Now, as soon as the processes are automated, there is a challenge which is being there with the organization, is that the possibility of insecure or unsecure transactions and the entire IT infrastructure. Because as soon as you go into IT, obviously it becomes internet dependency and some sort of digitalization of your data and resources. That means the possibility of hacking, the possibility of corruption of data, possibility of tampering the content is very high, because there are multiple paths and multiple ways for doing so. So anyhow, we have to focus on securing a system, and that is always a core part of IS audit, because the entire IS audit mechanism is based on risk. Now, what is risk? Risk means something which can go wrong in an organization, something which can generate some sort of negative output, which can hamper your business process, which can stop your business functioning. That is a risk. And in totality, when you talk about different risks from different angles coming down to an organization, and before moving forward, we have to consider all those risks. That has become the entire risk universe that has to be considered. Correct? When it comes to risk universe, obviously you have to conduct audit from the risk perspective. So there are certain audit risks as well. I hope you are aware about audit risk, which is IR, CR, and DR. That is inherent risk, fine, control risk, and detection risk. These are very well known to you during your or maybe by your normal auditing process as well. Now, to mitigate the risk, we have to put certain controls. And those controls are classified or placed as per the risk areas. It's not like all controls needs to be placed in all the systems. Why we need to very specifically putting up the control? Because every control will be looking forward for some or the other resources of your organization. They will use some resources. They will be costly. They will make your system slightly complex of operations. So right control at the right place, which are providing the right level of security and making the risk of an organization below the acceptable level is what the role of an IS auditor. So in totality, when you talk about IS audit, we are talking about auditing of the business processes or of the automation systems in an organization. The primary purpose is to make the system secure, and for making the system secure, we have to put the right controls at the right place. And those controls need not to be technical controls. Sometimes just a policy related controls are also equally important. Okay, so that is the basic concept of IS audit. Now, when you're talking about standards of auditing applicable out here, you have SA 200, SA 210, SA 220. These all standards are already known to you. And these standards are also applicable on IS audit format as well. So just to tell you, suppose let's focus on SA 300. Now, SA 300 focus on rigorous, well-documented and thoughtful planning. That means when you are going for IS audit, you cannot go vaguely. You have to understand the business case. You have to understand what the business is doing. And then only you can plan up a rigorous and a systematic process of doing an audit. Fine. So it is not only related to a normal auditing, but yes, it is also related to the IS auditing perspective, because without knowing the technological background, technological infrastructure, or maybe related to the business case scenario which forced them to go for automation, you cannot plan for a proper audit. So yes, rigorous documentation, a thoughtful planning is required for starting an audit in an organization. So all these standards of auditing which are stated in front of you and few more are applicable on IS audit as well. So just look at these standards. There can be some or the other questions connected to these. The questions connected to these may be direct. Obviously, they may ask you which particular essay belongs to a particular format, or maybe where the applicability of this particular essay 220 is there from the IS perspective. Okay. Now, when you talk about IT related auditing, obviously there are certain ways in which it becomes slightly difficult for an IS auditor to understand some standards and apply the best possible frameworks for auditing. So for doing that, ISACA, which is a globally known body for drafting certain information system audit and control related frameworks and standards, they have given a framework which is known as ITAF, that is Information Technology Assurance Framework. In this framework, there are three different series of working. That is 1000, 1200 and 1400 series. So because it becomes slightly tougher enough for an IS auditor, maybe because being a chartered accountant, to know what are the performance standards to be set for evaluating the performance of a technological system, what are the reporting standards to be presented on the basis of which a IS audit report needs to be presented. So these standards like ISO 1000, this ITF 1000 series, ITF 1200 series, which is performance standards, and ITAF 1400 series, which is reporting standards, can be taken help of and can be given reference of it. That becomes a globally accepted report. And these standards are very well defined for helping you out in making a very sound or doing the entire IS audit in a very sound manner. Now, when it comes to IS auditing, there are few things which have changed. One is evidence collection technique have changed completely, because now the evidences are not directly visible. So you have to understand the visibilities of these evidences needs to be done with the help of certain CAD tools and techniques. So when you talk about CAD tools and technique, we'll be talking about just in next few slides, that there are certain specific CAD tools which are stated in your modules, and there are certain stated specific CAD techniques again stated in your module. Those needs to be understood, or something needs to be applied for getting the evidences from the system, because now the system has evidences in the format of digital evidences, not a paper-based evidence. Now, once the evidences are there in front of you, you have to find out the techniques to evaluate the evidences, and for which only there are certain standards, globally accepted information system audit standards and checklist, or you can say framework, which can help you out in doing so. And then there is a reporting format, which is more or less specific. Suppose you are going for ISO 27000 audit, then there is a specific reporting format which is already there. You just need to put up your content, your findings and your recommendation, along with some sort of risk control matrix and some suggestions from your side to make up an entire specific or accepted report on a national or international level. So it's not a rocket science, but yes, these are the three specific things that needs to be taken care of, because these three things have changed from the manual audit to an automated audit. Now, the core part of the entire IS auditing revolves around risks and controls. So when you talk about internal controls is actually general controls plus IS controls is equals to internal controls. So when we talk about general controls, we are talking about physical controls and environmental controls. And when we talk about IS controls, we are talking about application controls or maybe firewall, anti-malware software. These are IT general controls. So when all these controls are combined up together, we are talking about the entire internal control mechanisms. The entire purpose of internal control is to make the system secure, reliable, efficient, intrudable, correct? So whenever you are auditing, the prima facie, the most of the audit, whether it is related to data center, clouding, or your own infrastructure, or maybe internet or any application, the prima focus is to make sure that CIA, that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the entire information system, data, resources, application, content to that should not be breached out. That means confidentiality of the information should be there. That means it should be accessible only to those who are allowed to access that. Integrated, that is, it should not be in a temperable format, that is, somebody should not be able to intercept the content and temper them out. So that means integrity should be maintained. And then putting up the control in such a manner that the information, data, resources must be available to the person for whom they are supposed to be available for continuity of the work and making the things happen. So that is availability. So what happens is that when we increase the level of control, C and I increases, but availability decreases. That means they are inversely proportional to each other. So we have to make sure as an IS auditor that the controls which we place in such a manner that CIA should be intact, and at the same time availability of the data and resources should not be in a questionable ways. Okay. And when we are putting up the controls, there are three different heads under which controls are placed in, or you can say there are three different types or categories of controls. One is preventive controls. That means if you know what can go wrong, if you know where it can go wrong and what damages it can do, and you also know that what can be done to prevent the entire possible risk to occur on the system. So controls are known as preventive controls. Okay. So if preventive controls are there, then majorly the system is by default away from most of the risk under which the prevention control has been placed in. If there is no prevention, or if you feel like prevention control may fail out, then the second level of controls are the detective controls. That means they must be able to identify, alarm, or notify the management in the case of any mishappening about to get happen or is happening in the system. And then once it is there, then there has to be immediate corrective actions. So there are two roles of corrective actions. One is to stop the damages and problems which have been detected and immediately to restore the systems to a normal operation in the fastest possible timeline. So that is corrective controls. But yes, whenever you have to put up the controls, preventive should be the first level of controls or first category of control that needs to be placed in, because they provide you a level of protection for it. And by default, we all know there is a principle called prevention is better than cure. So why to go for corrective and detective ways when we can prevent something out? Okay. So prevention, detection, and corrective control, these are the three different levels, or you can say there is a sequence of these things or these controls to be placed in this manner. Then when it comes to IS audit, there are certain phases of IS audit. And all these phases are again no rocket science. These are very similar to what the normal auditing mechanism is all about. So starting from setting up the audit objective, organization has to do that. The organization who is planning to go for IS audit has to set up the audit objective. Then there is a document called RPF, which is request for proposal, which is to be released in the organization. Make sure you are aware about RPF, because RPF is a document which is released for inviting multiple service providers to bid to get the the agreement done, or maybe to go for auditing purpose. Then there has to be a response for RPF, and then yes, there is a finalization of auditor. Now thereafter they have to draft an audit charter, which is, you can say, a Bible, on the basis of which the entire auditing has to be done, the entire step-by-step procedures of doing audit, the rights of auditor, the permissions to be given to auditor, maybe the reporting formats, the standards applicable in the company are all stated in audit charter. Once the audit charter has been agreed by the auditor, then there has to be an audit engagement letter to be signed in, and then the auditor goes for understanding the business case. Once it is there, Then the entire process of auditing starts, that is communication, quality assurance process, scope of audit, audit planning, evidence collection, preservation, evidence evaluation. Then last is documentation and report. So it is same as a normal auditing process. Do not get confused to that. There may be multiple questions based on the entire phases of audit related to RPF, related to what is the audit charter. There are a lot of questions based on audit charter. So make sure you are well versed of it. Then there are certain questions on the basis of evidence collection. We have already told CAT tools and CAT techniques are there. We'll be talking about those tools and techniques just in the next slide. Okay. Then let's talk about what are CAT tools. And then you can expect around 2 to 3 questions from this particular topic in the examination. So what are CAT tools? So there are typically 3 categories of CAT tools. One is generalized audit softwares. These softwares for CAT tools are readily available in the market. That means you don't have to customize or make these kind of tools which are readily available. So if you talk about IDEA, fine, is a tool which is already available. It's a kind of generalized audit. In a lot of organizations wherein a specific software has been built for the operation, suppose an organization has uniquely crafted an ERP module or maybe some uniquely in-house automation packages. And for those packages, the standard gas tools like gas tools are not applicable or they cannot operate on it. Then in that scenarios, there is an IS auditor whose involvement is required to develop a specific or specialized audit software for auditing purpose. The entire purpose of this is to collect the evidences in the right manner. That becomes specialized audit tool that is to be uniquely crafted and developed for the organization purpose, and that is not readily available in the market. On the other side, there are certain small utility tools, and these utility tools can help you out in doing certain small audits. Just an example for it, Belarc. I hope you might have done this Belarc audit work in your DISA PT classes or ISA PT classes. So these are utility tools which can directly fetch up certain basic information. These are kind of utilities which are available. And at the same time, there are certain log files which are they're available with your OS only. Log files developed by OS. These are also utility tools which are there available. You can just get these log files and do basic auditing from it. So the purpose of these tools is again the same, to make sure there are right evidences collected. Okay, and then there are certain techniques for evidence collection. Those techniques which are specifically mentioned in your module are 5, which is system control audit review file or embedded audit modules, snapshot, audit hooks, ITF, and continuous and intermittent simulation. To differentiate them all, let me just give you one small key points for that. So when it comes to continuous and intermittent simulation, fine, that works with database. So whenever you are talking about finding out the evidences from DBMS and databases, continuous and intermittent simulation is helpful for that. When it comes to ITF, just hold on, let me remove this. Fine. When it comes to ITF, it primarily focuses on dummy entries, or you can say some sort of fictitious entries. So whenever they say that there has to be dummy entry related to evidences or fictitious entries, make sure they are talking about ITF. When it comes to audit hooks talks about red flagging something, that is tagging something which is an error or irregularity out of the end. That is something which is exception, something which is out of the box. That is something which has been identified by audit hooks. When it comes to a snapshot, they're termed as pictures or some snapping during the path when the transaction flows from input to output stage. Okay, so that is the purpose of snapshot. So snapping, recording, if these words are there, make sure they are talking about snapshots. When it comes to SCARF is used this technique to involve embeddedly spatially written audit software in organization host application system. Typically, if with respect to application system, you want to collect multiple different types of evidences, and these are spatially been written, then becomes SCARF or embedded audit modules. The only important point with SCARF is that they are embedded into the system itself, and by default, they will be collecting the evidences on the regular basis. Okay, fine. Now there are certain frauds which are also studied in module 1. Now, the purpose of this particular topic mentioned out here is to tell that IS audit is not only for the purpose of developing a system or finding out the weakness or risk control related issues of the system. The audit is also related to finding out the evidences for cyber frauds. or presenting the evidences in a very informative format in the front of a court, and make sure that the culprit is being punished appropriately. So fraud detection, fraud investigation, and entire cyber forensic is also a part of it. Although this is just a theoretical part in front of you and in the module itself, so a lot of questions from detailing part, or you can say case study based part, is not expected from it. But at the same time, while talking, so let me tell you that your IT Act 2000 amendment in 2008, please make sure there are certain sections like 43A, like 66, section 67, section 69, section 72, complete sections. There are certain parts of 69, 66 as well, 72 as well. Make sure at least these particular sections are known to you, and we can expect certain questions from these sections on the regular basis in the examination. The purpose of this is to tell you that what is to be treated as a safer mode of doing electronic transactions and what is not, and what all things are covered up as illegal or illicit work over the internet, and there can be a punishment or imprisonment, or you can say penalty with respect to those acts. So typically, I'm not talking about to read the entire Information Technology Act, just few sections like 43, A, 66, 67, 69, and 72. That's it. So that covers up the first module, which was related to IS audit. I've told you what are the steps involved in audit, what are the CAT tools, which I stated out here. Typically focus on SCARF, Snapshot, ITF, CIS, and audit hooks. Also focus on gas, SAS, and utility softwares. At the same time, make sure that you are well versed of certain auditing standards like SA 200, 210, 320, 300, 520, and all. Because the questions from these modules are these topics are very much frequent in the examination point. Okay, so it is 18%, very standard, very basics, primarily a focus related to the auditing perspective. Fine, it's just an IT part added to that. Okay, module 2 is slightly on a typical side because there are certain higher level of standards to that. At the same time, it also includes business continuity part. So I'm expecting a lot of direct and indirect questions from it, and those questions are pretty much interesting to solve. Now, let me tell you what actually the governance aspect is. Now, whenever you're talking about governance aspect, the prima facie focus of governance is to make sure that you are eagle-eyeing the entire organization from the top and making sure things are going well in tune. So what is well in tune is talking about enterprise governance. So entire top level governance of an organization is enterprise governance. In enterprise governance, you talk about two basic things. One is corporate governance, one is business governance. Now, what is corporate governance? Corporate governance differs from business governance in that corporate governance primarily about protecting the business. Please make sure this particular word is known to you. That is the corporate governance. So whenever we are making some policies, some standard procedures, the only purpose of an organization to make sure that nobody should be bypassed or finding out a backdoor entry for doing a process. They are following a standard procedure of doing things. That means they want to protect the business from any mishappening. And when you talk about business governance, it is primarily focused on growing the business. So business governance, growing the business, corporate governance, protecting the business. So when it comes to corporate governance, we are talking about effectiveness. And whenever we are talking about business governance, we are talking about efficiency. Because when the processes are there, we talk about efficiency, and that is the reason it is known as performance. And when we talk about effectiveness, that is the reason it is known as conformance. So make sure these words are known to you: conformance, performance, effectiveness, efficiency, protecting the business, and growing the business. Okay. Now, whenever we are talking about enterprise governance, which includes corporate and business governance, the prima facie focus from IT angle is a three-step process, which is making sure risks are at the minimized level. That means optimization of the risk. Values are created in the organization. That is what making sure that resources are best used within the organization. And then making sure that whatever is done, it has to be based on performance. That is ensuring the benefit. This was related to optimization of resources. Benefit realization, and that is related to optimization of resources. So technically, there are these three pillars: ensure benefit realization. That is what the value creation. Optimization of the resources, that is what the performance, and optimization of the risk, that is related to risk mitigation. Although there can be somebody from DISA 2.0, DISA 3.0 participants. So just to tell you that there is no basic difference between these. So when it was Cobit 4.1, the terminology which was coined, which was ITG. When it was Cobit 2005, the terminology becomes GIT, Governance of Enterprise IT. And today, when you are talking about Cobit 2019, the terminology becomes Enterprise Governance of IT. But the prima facie focus of these three steps is this only, that is the basic pillar of the governance aspects from the IT angle is ensuring we are realizing the entire benefits, that is value creation, optimizing the resources, that is performance, and optimization of risks, that means risk mitigation. So these basic things are clear. Entire governance aspects, whether it is enterprise governance, corporate governance, conformance, performance, business governance, protecting the business or growing the business, these all are very much clear to you. Okay. Now, when you talk about governance, obviously there has to be systematic ways for implementation of the governance, and make sure there can be a lot of questions from this particular approach in different ways. What is the basic crux behind entire governance aspect? The basic crux is making sure that the business goals are connected to the IT goals. You know, there are a lot of questions asked very frequently based on this. And when it comes to what is the first step or what is the first governance thing that needs to be done, that is making sure that alignment between business and IT goals are there, because that is the only way out in which you can ensure that management commitment towards system development or management commitment towards the implementation of systems and management commitment toward devoting the resources for aligning the systems as per the automation plan can be devoted. So you have to make sure that all IT goals, IT related things, IT risks should be aligned to business goals, business risks and all. And then only as a board of directors, they will be able to understand it in a complete manner. Then thereafter, you have to formalize and implement a right IT governance process. So you have to choose a governance framework. So there are a lot of governance framework which are applicable. So you can choose whatever is best suitable for you. Then you have to talk about, you require a complete IT organization structure. And when we are talking about IT organization structure, there are different posts that needs to be taken care of, which starts from a systematic work. So let me tell you from where. The topmost body is related to IT strategy committee. IT strategy committee. After IT strategy committee, it becomes IT steering committee. Fine, there can be a question like, what is the role and responsibilities of IT strategy committee? What is the roles and responsibilities of IT steering committee? Who heads steering committee? Who heads IT strategy committee? So in terms of IT strategy committee, it is majorly head by the some external advisors, or maybe it comprises of external advisors headed by some or the other board members, and can have certain individuals from departmental head side to frame up the entire IT implementation strategy in the organization. When that particular strategy is framed out, IT steering committee includes obviously department heads. Yes, at the same time, CEO who is going to head the entire steering committee. At the same time, there are IT people who will now involve in making sure what was decided by the strategy committee, how it has to be technically implemented. Correct. That is the steering committee. And a steering committee's role is to steer out the entire automation plan in the organization in a systematic manner, which may span from nth day, 0th day to nth day. Okay, so that is an organizational structure. Now, when it comes to beyond it, you can have different people placed in out here. You can have chief technical officer. You can have chief information officer. Fine. You can have TA or DBA, database administrator or data administrator. You can have VCM head. Fine. That means in these, you can have project head as well. So these are the different ports which works under the steering committee and make sure that specific areas of automation is being completed effectively by them. When it comes to these posts, there are a lot of questions which has been asked from these posts. Fine. Apart from CTO, CIO, there are chief risk officer, chief security officer. So risk officer role is something else. Security officer is something else. Fine. At the same time, for each and every process, you can have an owner of a process owner, or you can have a process custodian as well. So process owner, risk owner, security owner. So ownership means somebody who holds the entire responsibility of that particular small process or that particular small risk. So when there is a risk owner, the responsibility of risk owner is to keep on monitoring the risk and make sure risk is always under the acceptable level. Whenever the risk slightly go beyond the acceptable level, Then the role is expanded. Now the risk owner has to inform somebody so that right action can be taken at the right time. Security owner has the only role of implementing security. Make sure for a particular process A, you cannot have the same owner, same person as the owner and same person as the security person. No, because then the loopholes identification and the covering of those parts becomes vague. So proper segregation has to be done. So this is again a core part of entire organizational structure. Proper segregation of duties, proper alignment of job roles and responsibilities as per their need to do, need to work or need to do basis has to be there. Okay. Now, one important thing and one you can say very, very important topic. Which of there are very frequent questions on this. Which of the following roles cannot be clubbed up together? Which of the following roles cannot be clubbed up together? So a DA or DBA can be clubbed up together. Yes, they can be. Yes, they can be. Smaller organization need not to have two posts. Can a person be a team member of strategy and can person be a head of a department as well? Yes, they can be. There is only one role which need not to be clubbed and which should not be clubbed in any circumstances is the role of a programmer. Because the programmer knows the technicalities. They have developed the system. So for them, modification, unauthorized modification is very easily possible. So in no chance you should give the programmer role or programmer a role which may be conflicting with their core ideologies. Fine. So programmer role is never, or you can say it should be avoided to be clubbed up with any other role in the organization. Very specific, whether it is a coder, programmer, these are the words which can be used for that. Rest all roles can be clubbed up together. Condition applies, they should not be conflicting. But programmer's roles is majorly never clubbed up with any other role in the organization. Then you have to communicate your desired vision to all stakeholders, because whenever you are going for automation, it's not automation for a specific group of individuals. You have to have everybody's involvement to that. Correct? And for sure, there can be some new roles and responsibilities implemented. So this, at the same time, you may have to talk about change management process. Okay, so this has to be aligned proper. So if you feel like there has to be need of change management, then change management process needs to be initiated as early as possible. Then you have to make sure you are planning, aligning and managing the entire IT investment as a portfolio for an organization. So why saying so, why doing so is to make sure that entire IT should not be treated separately. Every resource, every asset which has been there, every process which is automation is to be a part of your portfolio. Correct. That means now it is the process through which you have to get your work done. Now there is no alternate. Now, if you feel like there is a manual process, there is an automated process, then shifting over becomes a very tedious task. So make sure you have to align and make sure this is a part of your business portfolio, if not immediately, but in a gradual course of time. Then you have to make sure these processes are being used. These are implemented. And for doing so, you have to ensure there is a performance management system. And this performance management system will compare two things. What is the normal process and what is the automated process, or older process and a newer process. And a clear-cut comparison and clear-cut benefit from this is going to support all stakeholders to shift from older system to a automation system. Correct? Then keep on embedding new approaches. That is another systematic approach of implementing GIT. Now, why new approaches are required? Because in technology, there is new things which can come up. And at the same time, requirements of users, the risks in the market, competitors' involvement will force you to keep on modifying your process, because if you will not do so, then you become outdated from the system. So embedded new approaches, but when you are embedding new approaches, make sure you have to sustain with your existing process. Fine. It's very similar to when the bank have gone for automation, the first thing which has been automated was cash disbursement, because that was the first thing that was needed for everyone. So even at midnight, 2 p.m. or 2 a.m., if you need a cash, then bank were off. So ATM machine, the first responsibility for cash disbursement. Then gradually they have come for what? Cash deposit. Then other facilities are also now with ATM or some other robotic process automation devices. That means they have sustained the earlier thing and they keep on adding, and they are building up the entire portfolio, right? So you are planning, aligning and managing things to build up the entire portfolio. Now, whether you talk about banking systems or insurance systems or railway automation systems or any other information system which you have been seeing from last around a decade or so, they have been gradually expanding their portfolio. They have been gradually expanding their IT process so that entire system should be automated, not all at once, in a systematic, acceptable manner. So systematic means they are sustaining the old process, they are embedding the new approaches and making sure it's a part of their portfolio. and stakeholders are pretty much convinced to use that, and they are making sure they are aligning the business goals with the IT goals, so that IT is not going vague and your business goals are being satisfied with the help of IT involvement. Okay, fine. Now, obviously, for doing so, for implementing GIT, you need some or the other GRC framework to operate on. Fine. So, Cobit 2019 is one of those GRC framework. So, to talk about more of Cobit 2019, just technically know that it is divided into 5 domains. One of those domain is governance domain, rest 4 are management domain. So this is a domain EDM, which is evaluate, direct and monitor. Then comes APO, align, plan and organize. Then becomes BI, build, acquire, implement, and systematically this. Make sure you are aware about this EDM process, because there are a lot of questions which have been asked from the domain side. And the first domain, the foremost important thing that needs to be done before going forward for the development process is make sure you are evaluating, you are directing, and you are monitoring the process. Correct? Although you have to remember all these 5 domains and make sure you are aware about the full form of APO, PI, DSS, MEN, EDM. Fine. So this is basic thing related to Cobit. Apart from that, in Cobit 2019, there are 6 principles. Correct? Now, in 6 principles, there is no rocket science. These principles are applicable even without IT as well. First is making sure every stakeholder has a value to the system. Every stakeholder is seeking value from the system. So value in the sense of their requirements have been fulfilled. The risk areas to be mitigated. The performance parameter needs to be ensured, and the services should be seamlessly given to the users. Thereafter, you have to make sure, I'm going randomly, although there is no sequence for it. So providing stakeholder value is one. Then make sure there has to be an end-to-end governance systems. That means no aspects of the automation systems, no areas, no function areas of the entire automation should be left out of the governance system. That means everything has to be covered up under Cobit umbrella. That is second. Third, make sure that because Cobit 2019 framework, and by default before that as well, Cobit 5 framework are customizable framework. So you are tailoring the entire Cobit framework as per the organization need. That means you are not copy pasting something from anybody's else implementation scenarios and steps. You have to tailor it as per organization need, and that makes it more flexible, at the same time more acceptable as per organization. Correct? So that is tailored. Then make sure you are using a systematic approach for doing so, which is a holistic approach. And for understanding holistic approach, we can just move on to the next slide and see how the components of Cobit 2019 are helping you out in implementing this holistic approach. Thereafter, one of the important principle of Cobit is make sure that governance aspect, that is people who are making the policies and people who are implementing the policies, are different. That is separating governance with management. Now, what is the new principle which has been added in 2019 is what? Dynamic governance framework. So why it is so? Because with the time to come up, you cannot have one unified policies. So policies, procedures and guidelines and framework needs to be modified on the regular basis. You all have seen so that in banking scenario as well, from the day you have started your net banking till today, there is a lot of password related things which have changed. There is a lot of user authentication related things which have changed. Earlier it was only password, then it becomes password or maybe some or the other captchas or some images or some other information like your credit card, debit card number or your PIN number have been asked to make sure that user who is signing in is an authenticated user. So with a gradual scenario, you have seen that systems are modifying. Now, why systems are modifying? Because at the back end, there are policies which are changing on the regular basis. Correct? So when you talk about governance mechanism, it should not like once governing mechanism is set, it has to be lifetime implemented. No. With the scenarios changing too fast, environment is demanding the change in the policies in a faster manner. So you have to have a dynamic governance system. So this is something, this is the, what we say, the newer principle which has been added in Cobit 2019 framework. Then we talk about enablers. Earlier they were known as enablers. Now they are termed as components. So enablers in Cobit 5 are renamed as components in Cobit 2019. Now what are the 7 components? 7 components, you can say every system, every organization who is automating, who is planning to go for automation, must have a well-defined principal policies and procedures. Until as principal policies and procedures are well-defined, it is practically impossible to go forward. Once this is there, the second thing which is required is to make sure every process is well-defined. That means how to execute is well-defined. What needs to be done? and then how it needs to be done. And then comes who will do that. Now, when I'm talking about here, who, we are only talking about the posts, not the people. We are only talking about the post. So there has to be a post of GM, there has to be a post of manager, there has to be a post of clerical staff. That's an organization structure. So once the structure is well defined, it becomes, the next part is becomes making sure that we are putting up the right people at the right place. That is a secondary issue. But who has to do it? Then comes information. Culture, ethics, and behavior. That is, whosoever is doing so must be fulfilling certain culture, ethics, and behavior norms. They must be working under some code of function, code of ethics, and their behavior towards working should be positive. Now, when they are doing so, fine, they must be generating some or the other thing which is to be termed as information. That is what to be generated. That is information. To generate information, what we need certain service infrastructure and applications. Correct? And to make sure these principles are followed, these processes are executed, this organization structure, we have a well-defined person to place in it. You have a working culture, ethics, behavior. You have an information to generate. You have a application to work on. Then finally, you need certain people to be operated on an organization. That means we now need people with the required skills and competencies. So if you are following this particular process in a very systematic manner, fine, you are by default fulfilling the holistic approach methodology, and no part of your organization functioning is going on a wrong track. It is being completely aligned, completely synchronized, and completely as per your goals and ideologies are aligned to each other. Okay, fine. Apart from Cobit 2019, there is another framework which is given to you, which is ISO 27000 framework. Now, in 27000 framework, they talk about 14 controls and 10 ISMS standards. Fine, which are aligned. The primary purpose of this particular standard is to make your organization secure, make the information secure, make the system secure, and to make sure that system is safer from what? Cyber attacks, from any kind of malicious codes, from any kind of physical or environmental risks, from any kind of administrative risks. Correct? So that means every kind of risk to be mitigated in certain specific manner. And that is the reason the entire 14 controls are specified in a very systematic format. That is, information security policies has to be there, organization information security, human resource manpower security, asset management, access control, cryptography, physical environmental security, operation security, communication security, right? So all these 14 principles or 14 controls of ISMS. Now, ISMS is Information Security Management System. Information Security Management System, which is stated by ISO or IEC, right? That talks about these frameworks. The only purpose of ISO 27000 is to make your system secure, and secure. Okay, fine. Apart from that, there are other frameworks as well with the ISO, which can be a part of the entire GRC implementation with ISO frameworks. That is ISO 38500, which is a corporate governance framework. It focuses on three things, which is again the same EDM. I have already told you, evaluating, directing, monitoring. So these three things, although I have told you from Cobit 2019 perspective, but are also applicable in ISO 38500 angle as well. Because when you are talking about corporate governance, that means the governance part is majorly focused on evaluating the needs, directing the organization, and making sure they are monitoring things on the regular basis, so that whenever there is a modification required, they are doing it on the timely basis. Then there is an ISO 31000 framework, which is a risk management framework. And then there is ISO 22301, which is a framework for VCM. Okay, we'll be talking about this framework at the later part as well. Okay. Risk management part, the entire thing with respect to risks and control will be covered up by Kapil Suri sir in the next 1.5 hours. So I am leaving this for as of now. Apart from that, there are certain compliances. So when it comes to GRC, G becomes governance, R becomes risk, and C becomes compliances. G I have already talked you, that is related to policies. Fine, and primarily related to corporate governance, enterprise governance, or you can say enterprise governance two part, corporate governance and business governance. Okay, risk, module 4 and 5, sir will take care of it because I do not want a repetition. And then comes the compliances part. So I have mentioned just few compliances for you. Apart from that, there are many more which can be added on. I have only put enough which are there in your module. So that is Information Technology Act, which I have already told you. Fine, I have already mentioned some sections from it. Then comes Personal Data Protection Bill 2019, which was modified by Joint Parliamentary Committee and were accepted on 21st November 2021. The primary purpose of this is to make sure the personal data of an Indian should be protected, right? Because we know that data is something which is very important these days, and we all are worried about our personal information which gets leaked out. So I'm expecting some or the other question related to data protection, data validity, data integrity can be asked. Apart from that, there is General Data Protection Regulation, which is GDPR, which is by European Union. Although the implementation of this in India is not directly, but yes, our implementation in terms of Personal Data Protection Act. Apart from that, there are other general data as well, which needs to be taken care of. So all those things which are related to personal are being taken care by this bill. Any apart from personal data, there is some general data that has been taken care. GDPR, we are implementing, we are not directly, but indirectly we are implementing the entire guidelines of GDPR. Okay, fine. So whenever you are going for successful GRC implementation, there are these certain goals and objectives which are achieved, and there can be some questions based on this. So which of the following are the basic goals or primary goals, or which of the following is a goal which is achieved by successful implementation of a GRC framework? So you can talk about there is a lot of reduction, improvement, and maybe overall compliance status that can be implemented. So any organization today is looking forward for a lot of GRC auditors and GRC framework implementers. And IS auditors or a chartered accountant can find out this particular thing as a major opportunity for them. Okay. Fine. Then performance management, obviously. So performance management, as I have already told you, that it is very important. So for performance management, 2-3 things needs to be done first. That is, you have to have a precise goal setting. Then key performance indicators and key risk indicators, if are stated, you can implement things with the help of balanced scorecard approach to go for it. Now, balanced scorecard approach is a 4-dimensional approach in which there are 4, you can say, angles through which we are talking about the performance. So this is the 4, that is financial, customer, learning and growth, and internal business process. So successful implementation of balanced scorecard approach will for sure let you know the ways through which the performance of an organization can be improved on a gradual basis. Right? Correct. So that was related to module 2 part 1, and module 2 part 2 was related to business continuity. So when it comes to business continuity, make sure there are a lot of questions from this particular topic which are stated in front of you. So BCP, what is BCP? What is the difference between BCP and DRP? What is BIA? That is business impact analysis. So whenever you talk about there is an incident, fine, any incident can be happening in the organization. So every incident has some or the other impact on business. If the impact is positive, that is good enough. If the impact is negative, then you have to talk about the intensity of the impact. And if the impact is considered to be on a larger impact, then on that particular impact, you may have to talk about either BCP or DRP, depending on the intensity of the impact. If that particular incident has been categorized as not normal incident, but as a disaster, so obviously you have to invoke a DRP, disaster recovery plan, right? As you all have been into pandemic era in last around couple of years or so, you have seen that although there are a lot of diseases which are coming down to the nation almost every now and then, every year there is dengue, every year there is chikungunya, but as soon as there was corona and it was disaster, it was considered as a disaster. So a disaster recovery plan was invoked, a lockdown and certain other things were implemented on the immediate basis. Although it was just a business continuity plan, which talks about readiness of the medical facilities in the city or in the particular area wherein dengue or chikungunya cases are increasing, and they keep on functioning accordingly without stopping the entire country with a lockdown effort. So clear-cut differentiation between BCP and DRP can be seen from here. Correct? That all depends on the impact, the intensity of impact. So that is the first thing that needs to be discussed. So if an organization, if there is a question which asks that what is the basics, which talks about whether the BCP, DRP or any plan needs to be activated, impact. So prima facie, the first step should be the impact analysis, which is to be termed as business impact, or in a short form BIA. Then there are certain other terms like MBCO, that is minimum business continuity objective. That means whatever the problems, whatever the issues you are into, whatever the disaster and incidents that happen in the organization, this is the bare minimum. This is the bare minimum business requirements that needs to be continued. That is referred to the minimum level of services or product that is acceptable, required to be organization to achieve the business objective during an incident, emergency or disaster. Karna hi karna hai. There is no choice, you can get rid of it. Then comes MAO, that is maximum acceptable outrage. That means what is the maximum outrage, maximum downtime or maximum damage which can be beared by an organization, which can be tolerated by an organization. Okay, that is maximum acceptable outrage. Then there are two terms like RTO and RPO. RTO means a predetermined time at which the product service activity must be resumed. That means within this time you have to resume your services. So suppose you feel like after a disaster you can resist the customers, you can resist your image to be spoiled in the market for suppose 1 hour. That means within 1 hour you have to resume your business process. That is recovery time objective. Within this time you have to recover your business, if not all, at least few things, correct, must be recovered. No choice for that. RPO is the maximum data loss. Fine. Maximum data loss, that is the minimum amount of data used with an activity. That is maximum data loss that can be sustained in an organization. Okay, that is, if this data is lost, okay, no issues, we are able to sustain. Beyond that, there can be a situation which can be termed a disaster, or you may lose out your credibility and image or client in the market. That is max recovery point objective. That is within this time, within this data loss, your recovery must start. Okay. Resilience is the ability of an organization to resist being affected by an incident. Every organization have a different resistance capacity, and that is known as resilience. Sorry. Okay. Now see, suppose you are having an earthquake attack or earthquake happening in your premises. Obviously, a very sound building can withstand the earthquake around 5 magnitude, and a very unplanned or unorganizedly built up building can resist only around 3.5 or 4 magnitude earthquake and can have a crack or can crumble down. So that is resilience. That is the ability of an organization to resist and being affected by an incident. Then for every DRP, you have to have an IR plan, that is incident response plan. Fine. So that is for every incident, not DRP, for every incident. So there can be multiple incidences and multiple scenarios of incidences in an organization. So you have to plan up some or the other documented thing, some or the other plan with respect to every incident which may affect your system negatively. And that becomes most challenging thing, because when it comes to incident, there can be fire, there can be earthquake, there can be water, there can be virus attack, there can be employees problem, there can be unrest in the organization as well. Fine. There can be some or the other sudden disasters like pandemic and all. So how to plan up these incidences is a challenging thing. So every organization have to think what can be termed as an incident for them and what are the important incidences, and response of them must be there in the organization as a predefined basis, not a reactive basis. That means they have to be proactive with this planning. Rest all things, some incidences which are very having very less probability to happen, you can delay those incidences over a period of time. Okay. Apart from that, when you talk about DRP, there are certain phases of DRP. Fine. And these phases are executed in sequence, starting from crisis phase, then comes emergency phase, then comes recovery phase, and then comes restoration phase. This phase starts immediately as soon as a disaster has been declared, immediately, and it can continue up till few hours from the disaster. Emergency response phase is a phase which start again immediately but can continue up till few days or few hours. In that particular phase, you have to inform certain people, like medical emergency, fine, like police related emergencies. If there is a theft, if there is a burglar, if there is a bomb threat, you may have to inform certain bomb squad as well. That is the emergency response phase. In crisis, the prima facie focus is to evacuate the premises and save lives. That is the main focus. When it comes to recovery phase starts after after the entire incident happened, that is few days. It can last for few months or few years. That all depends how long it is going to take the entire system or the entire damage to get recovered. Fine. So that is the systematic process from damage assessment and starts continuing till you are able to recover. And once the recovery has been done, that comes the restoration phase. That means you are shifting back to the normal. See, when the disaster happens, you have shifted your business operation to some other place just for continuity. And as soon as the recovery phase is completed, you have to restore your operations from the temporary side to back to the normal side. So that is this particular phase is the restoration conditions to normal. That is the restoration phase. Okay, it starts and it may get over whenever you feel like your entire restoration is being completed. And after restoration, you can also think about what was the entire damage occurred, and you can evaluate the quantum of the losses the organization have beared, maybe financial losses, manpower losses, or maybe some sort of business losses also. So then you can comment that, okay, this disaster has resulted into XYZ crore or XYZ amount to your organization. So DRP has systematic 4 phases. Make sure these 4 phases are known to you and that too in sequence. Then come BCP. You know that the BCP I've already told you starts from impact analysis. And then comes the risk assessment, planning of BCP. Testing of BCP is very important. I'm expecting at least 1 question or maybe 2 questions from this particular topic for sure. That is testing of BCP. Now, when it comes to testing of BCP, there are typical 5 ways which are there testing mentioned in your module. Now, before that, why testing of BCP is important? Because when the disaster or any business interruption happens, fine, until unless your plan is tried and tested, do you feel like it can be implemented without being tested and tried prior? No. So testing of any BCP or DRP is important. So make sure it is not only testing of BCP, it is also testing of DRP. Correct? Although, just to tell you, DRP is a subset of BCP only. Fine. So when you are talking about BCP, by default, DRP is included to that. Okay, now testing. So there are 5 different ways of testing stated in your module. One is checklist approach. That is just making sure that all things which are there to be included in the BCP or DRP are there included. That's a checklist approach. Structural walkthrough is a systematic flow that step 1 needs to do this, step 2, step 3, step 4. If this is there is a structured walkthrough and you are walking through. These 2 things are completely documented approaches or documented testing. You are not going to the field, you are not testing the plan in a real-time scenario, you are just testing it on paper, checking it on paper where the plan includes everything and the plan is systematically drafted. That is structured walkthrough. Then among that entire plan or maybe from that entire plan, you can test the plan into parts. That you can test how the evacuation needs to be done in the case of a fire. So you've just tested the evacuation plan today. You have just tested the extinguisher today. Fine. That is called simulation testing. That means small things are being tested rather than the entire plan altogether. When you are testing the entire plan, fine. This is testing in parts. This is only document-based testing. On the other side, when you are testing the entire plan, you can do it in 2 ways. One is parallel testing, one is full interruption test. In parallel testing, you do not stop your work. You test your plan parallel to the work operation. That means people who are involved in work, let them involve in work. And few individuals who are responsible for BCP and DRP can be involved in BCP and DRP. Now, just to tell you here, BCP and DRP team is not a separate team. People within the organization are being given this extra role to be played in the case of a disaster or an incident which has happened. Why there is no extra team? Because you never want any disaster to happen. But still you are having a BCP DRP. So having a separate team for BCP DRP does not make a sense. We always involve the current people. Another reason for that, they know what they are doing. They know which is more valuable. So they will be able to act immediately in the case of interruption. So that is BCP and DRP is not a separate team. These are the current individuals only doing certain specific roles in the organization. Few of them have been grouped up, trained for any incident or any disaster to happen. Okay. So parallel testing, you take few individuals out of it for testing and rest of them are doing work. Whereas in full interruption test, you actually stop your work and go for the entire testing of a plan, which is actually also known as what? Mock drill. Okay, that is full interruption test. So these are 5 testing mechanisms. You can make up a couple of them or you can test it from one, but make sure whenever you are testing, it has to be tested thoroughly. And then when it is required to be implemented, your testing has given you a satisfaction that plan is implementable. Although whenever you are testing, by default, there is a risk of something may go wrong. And typically in the case of full interruption test. So you have not planned for a disaster, but during this incident, the disaster actually occurred in your organization. It may happen. Fine. So the least possible or the most dangerous testing is known as full interruption testing or mock drill. And this is also known as another word which has been asked by institute once, which is known as acid test. Full interruption test is also known as acid test. And why acid? Because you know that while playing with acid, you yourself may get burned. Okay. Now, when there is the entire plan, make sure that all phases are executed properly. And there is a BCM manual which is prepared. Now, when you are talking about BCP, that is business continuity plan, without manual, the plan cannot be, ensured. Reason being, you are developing a plan today, and this plan may be required to be executed 10 years down the line. Now, unless it has been documented, it has been a manual supported or a manual supported with the plan, you cannot expect that things are there. And at the same time, as an IS auditor, you need a documentation to audit that as well. So BCM manual becomes something which is another sort of business continuity Bible, fine, for an organization. So manual means entire step-by-step procedures, everything, all roles and responsibilities, all activities to be taken care of, all synchronization of the processes, everything to be mentioned in the entire manual. Okay, so this is something which is very important. It is required for the futuristic perspective as well, for further modification. And whenever you are maintaining a manual and a plan, make sure these manuals and plans are having a version control. Version control is applicable with all softwares, all plans, and all documentation. And this is important whenever you are modifying, whether it is by force modification or by choice modification, there has to be another version of that particular plan or a document or a software. And keeping a track on a version number and the backend process, what it forces you to go for modification is to be synchronized. Suppose you have modified it for 5 times, so version has to go from suppose 1.0 to 1.5. That by default says it has been modified 5 times. So version control has to be there, and latest version needs to be kept always in live mode for tracking. Okay. And then there are certain different types of backups. Again, you can expect at least 3 to 4 questions from these topics, backup and recovery sites. So there are 4 different backups, which is full backup. That means you are taking the backup from 0th day to nth day. Always. That is the full backup. When you are talking the incremental backup, it is only what has changed, or sorry, rather than changed, the better word is what is newly added. What is newly added from the last full backup? That is what the increment. What is newly added from the last full backup is being backed up. And whatever has changed, that means newly added plus old data which is modified. All data can also be modified. So when you're talking about newly added data plus old data which is modified, you are taking the differential backup. Incremental only talks about newly added data. Differential talks about newly added plus old modified data as well. And then mirror backup is backup of backup. Is backup of backup. Sometime in an organization, only single backup is not accepted. They need multiple backups. So rather than taking multiple backups, they prefer taking backup of backup. So these are specific backups. So there can be a question, what needs to be done in an organization who have recently incurred an incident which has stopped their data functioning. So make sure you have to restore the full backup first, and then maybe incremental backup or differential backup, whatever you have taken. Fine. Suppose you have taken the full backup on suppose 1st of April, and then the system crashed on 10th of April. And now you have to restore. What needs to be done? Make sure from 1st of April, you have to restore the full backup. And then from 2nd till 9th, fine, either increment or differential, whatever you have taken needs to be restored in a very sequential mode. Sequential mode, correct? So the restoration process should be what? Restore the last full backup and then go for incremental or differential backup in a systematic mode, so that whenever the disaster has occurred, before that you are able to restore the systems in a systematic manner again. Okay. Then recovery sites. These are the sites which are actually known as temporary sites, wherein you have to start your business operations when the actual side of your business is not working. When the actual site is not working, these recovery sites serves as an alternate site for you. So recovery sites, or also you can say alternate sites. Okay, so mirror site is in a simple term fully equipped plus fully functional. Fully equipped, fully functional. Hot site is fully equipped site. Warm site is partially equipped site. Now see what I have said. It is fully equipped for fully functional. This fully functional thing is only with mirror site. Hot site has nothing to do with fully functional. Warm site is partially equipped site. Cold site is least equipped site. Okay, then comes reciprocal site. That means if an organization is having an arrangement, suppose your and my organization has a contractual arrangement, that is if something goes wrong to my site, I can use your site your operations and something goes wrong to you, you can do that same with me. That is called reciprocal arrangement, in which an organization need not to invest money and energy into maintaining a site, because all these three things you have to maintain a site, put up energy into maintenance, and whenever you are putting that, obviously security risk are again to be duplicately handled. And when it comes to outsource site, this is what is majorly known as clouding. So you go for clouding or maybe certain third-party data centers. Third-party data centers. That is, I do not want to go for my own site. I do not want to have a reciprocal arrangement with somebody else. I prefer going forward for somebody who is actually taking care of the entire recovery sites in a systematic manner, or else I can go for clouding. So those are known as outsourced sites. So technically there are three different types of sites. And as we move down, obviously the cost of setup reduces considerably reduces. Okay, so depending on the organization to organization, or maybe the delicacy of the work they are handling, or the kind of privacy they need to have with their data and operation, they can maintain mirror, hot, warm, cold, reciprocal, and outsource sites. Okay, then obviously when it comes to data BCP, there is a part of auditing as well. So auditing is not a rocket science here. Whatever you have done for development of the entire plan, whether it was finding out the need or maybe impact analysis, till development of plan, for testing to the plan, documentation of the plan, or everything needs to be tested again in the systematic manner. So it's not like the plan is developed first and then it is audited. No, you have to go parallel. So with the entire impact analysis, auditing of impact, requirement of plan, auditing of plan, right? Development of plan, auditing of plan, testing of plan, auditing of testing. So all auditing part goes parallel to the entire BC process, and auditing is the only thing which tells that yes, plan is being perfectly developed and it can be executed when, as and when required. Okay, so that covers up module 2 as well, which was related to the basic ideologies for it. Fine. Now module 3, I'm going to go slightly fast because SDLC you have already discussed during your IT or ISCA phases. Fine. So there is no rocket science in module 3 because I want to focus more on at least solving certain 10-20 questions with you. So system development should not be treated separate. Any organization who is planning to go for a system development, if the system development should be taken as a project for an organization, because gradually if you talk about the multiple projects executed for system development, it leads to a portfolio. Just to tell you again, when it comes to IRCTC, the first thing which was automated was confirm tickets. Then that was a project. Then second thing, another project was what? Waiting tickets to be gone online with IRCTC portal. Then goes Tatkal ticket, then goes premium Tatkal ticket, and then suddenly goes what? Normal ticket. So gradually the entire ticketing model has been shifted from manual thing to an automated part. So each and every small thing was a project. In totality, they have built up their entire portfolio. Okay, so that was entire thing which is to be implemented in a system development should be taken as a project, and the entire management can be termed as a project management part of it. Okay, now when it comes to system development, why we need system? Very, very clear cut aspects. Because see, the development of system cost complexity is very high. It can lead to a disastrous failure, or it can lead to a very high success for an organization. So when the extreme ends are there, unplanned approach will going to get you the negative end, not the positive end of it. That is the benefit part of it. So need of SDLC is what? The automation, the competition, the client, the services, what we need, the scalability is required what in their market. And the benefits are enormous. And you have all seen the benefits of IRCTC, banking, insurance, shopping, food related things, Swiggy, Zomato. So development of Swiggy, Zomato app should also be taken as a project. Fine, entire project development has to be there. And then it can be taken as a system development process as well. So when it comes to SDLC is divided into 8 phases as per your module. Fine, and technically things are specific, phases are not specific. But we are synchronizing with the institute guidelines. So let's focus on 8 different phases of system development. And 8 phases includes, so I have put up these things on the left hand side and right hand side, you have the detail of it. So pre-investigation phase, requirement analysis phase, system analysis and design phase, acquisition phase. So focus on feasibility studies. There are 8 feasibilities to be done, and whether to make a system or to buy a ready-made package, that is decided in the feasibility phase. There can be a question asked from the institute in the DSA examination that in which particular phase the make or buy decision is being taken. It is being taken in the feasibility phase. In the feasibility phase only, whether you have to train an individual or you have to outsource, decided in feasibility phase. Correct? So feasibility phase plays a although every phase plays a very important role, but feasibility phase is something which is setting the base of the entire development. And there is a documentation which is prepared almost every phase. So after feasibility or pre-investigation phase, the first document is known as business case. Now after pre-investigation, there is a requirement analysis phase which collects the entire requirement in different manners. So document review, questionnaire, interview, observation. These are the 4 ways in which requirements are grabbed. And the requirements are grabbed for 6 things. That is input, process, output, storage, security, and at the same time, you will be looking forward for internal document review while you are getting the requirements. Okay. Then you prepare certain standard document again, which is known as SRS, which is very standard. Without this particular document prepared, you cannot move forward with the development phase. Now you can see there is an auditor role everywhere, because once a phase has been executed, auditor has to go in parallel to that. So again, to say you that during SDLC, auditor is not doing afterwards, the entire phases are completed. It is going in parallel and synchronization with the entire development process. Okay. Now, once the requirements are grabbed, you have to go for system designing. And for designing, you can take help of DFD, that is data flow diagrams, case tools. You can also take off flow charts. You have to understand the difference between DFD and flow charts. So flow charts are specific, DFDs are generalized. Okay, DFDs are generalized flow of movement of data in organization. Flow charts are very specific to a process. You have to talk about data dictionary, metadata. Fine, I am sure you are aware of it. If you are not, then please make sure you should go for this, because you can have one question typically from data sites. So in data dictionary, there are terminologies like data dictionary, metadata, data warehouse, database, big data, data lakes. So sir will be taking care of it, because data analytics and terminology with respect to data are there in module 6, chapter 2, data analytics. You can have decision table, decision trees, UI and UX. Fine. And after this, you develop another report, which is not a mandatory report, but still making this report is helping you out. That is SDR, system design report. Then once this is there, you can go for acquisition. That is, you release a tender and a proposal. You look forward for multiple people who are supplying hardware and softwares to come up with this. With this particular tool, you can take reference of CMMI model. That is capability, maturity, model integration, which helps you out in filtering the maturity and capability of a service provider to you. Okay, capability, maturity, model integration. It is again a ISACA product, or you can say standard, which can help you out in filtering which particular vendor is justified. Then you have to go for system development. Although in system development, most of the chartered accountants and people feel like there is no role. But my dear, system development requires a lot of engagement from auditor side. Now here, what auditor has to do, you have to make sure that debugging is being done. You have to make sure that standards which are being set in these phases are being implemented, and the entire documentation has to be there, because this is the lengthiest phase. This is the lengthiest phase. And if in this lengthiest phase, if you are not keeping a track on the entire development process, you can end up into a dead end. Auditor has to have a very important role plays here, although you cannot directly involve into development like coding and all, but your indirect involvement is going to justify that inlining with the process is important. And to check inlining, you can take help of tools like PERT, CPM, Gantt charts, and these things are in your module as well. So you have to ensure that you are aware about PERT, CPM, Gantt charts, and what is the importance of this. Then there is an important thing called testing, and expect at least 2 to 3 questions from this testing part, which includes black, white, and gray box testing, alpha, beta testing, unit integration testing. Although rest all testing can be very easily understood, the most of the people have basic problems in black, white, and gray. So let me cover up that. In black box testing, the person who is testing the system does not know about the functionalities. Whereas in white box testing, they are knowing about functionalities. That means white box testing is an open testing in which I know what the system is capable of doing. I know about the coding, and then I'm testing the system. So primarily white box testing is to check the capabilities of the system. Whereas in black box, I'm not aware about what the system is supposed to do. So I'm only testing input and output, not the functionality part. So what I'm checking is what incapabilities of the system. Okay. So rather than having complete blacks or complete white box testing, today you have a combination of those, which is known as gray box testing. But all these things depends on how sensitive the system is, and whether you are allowed to open up the entire system, open up few systems, or open up nothing to end tester. So that includes black, white, or gray box testing. Okay. During the testing phase, you also go for training of a parallel to the testing phase, so that as soon as testing phase completed, we are ready for implementation. Now, when you are talking about implementation, there are certain prerequisites of implementation as well that needs to be taken care of. One is site preparation, hardware, equipments, and all those things. One important thing which is very critical is that data conversion has to happen. That means the older system format of data must be converted to the newer format. Fine, so that you can start working, because without data, what can be done on a system? Data is actually the fuel. Data is the most important fuel today. So if that particular fuel is not there, can you expect the system to function accordingly? No. Correct. So data conversion needs to be talked on. Again, you can expect at least 1 or 2 questions from it. So what data conversion is, what are the risks in data conversion, what is the process of data conversion, whether the manpower should be involved in the data conversion or not. If it is automated, what is the role of an auditor to data conversion? These can be the simplest of the question to be asked. And with respect to that, there is another thing which is known as dumpster diving, which is a risk. Dumpster diving. Now, what dumpster diving is? Now, once the data is converted from the old format to the newer format, and you are confirmed that your newer format has been working perfectly, what needs to be done with the old data? You have to delete, remove, or discard the data. But obviously, that delete, remove, or discarding should be done in such a manner that no important thing out of it. That means no dumpster diving. Dumpster diving is getting into that garbage and finding out certain valuable thing out of it. So people or attackers might be interested to that. So make sure after the data conversion happens successfully, the older data should be deleted and dumpster diving should be avoided as much as possible. Then once these steps are completed, you can talk about different ways of implementation or different conversion strategies. So there are 4 different: direct, phased, pilot, parallel. Out of these 4, you can choose one. So just an example for you, as IRCTC have just given an example, they have gone with phased implementation. Along with phase, they have also gone with parallel. Let me tell you how. They have gone for confirm ticket, then waiting, then tatkal, then premium tatkal, so that was phased. And during that also, it's not like they have completely shifted to the online. Their offline ticketing counters are also working. That was parallel as well. Fine. Whereas when income tax department have gone for implementation of a new portal for income tax filing, what they have gone for direct or abrupt implementation. That means on a particular day, the older system was stopped and the newer system was placed into working. That was direct implementation. Pilot means trial. You try something, once succeeded, you implement it at the later phases or maybe the successive different branches. So it happens when an organization is having 10 different offices. Let's implement it at one branch office or one head office. One successful implementation, you can replicate it to other branches parallelly. Okay. And then after implementation, obviously there is a post-implementation review, which is very important. So which is also known as PIR. Make sure that this terminology is known to you, because institution can put PIR as a short form. So in post-implementation, you can evaluate the system from development, operation, information, and whatever the objectives you have set in the first phase. In the phase 1, you have set some objective that needs to be achieved after the operation of a system is being successfully done. So make sure that objectives are achieved. So this is what the evaluation part is. And whenever there is an evaluation, you have to make sure that if something gap is identified, some force from the authority side is implemented, maintenance has to be there. So there are 6 different types of maintenances depending on the requirements. Schedule, corrective, adaptive is under pressure. That is forceful implementation or as per the compliances. Perfective is choice of user. That is user's choice. Preventive is to make sure that your system is being withstanding the possible risks which are coming up in the market. And rescue and firefighting is immediate maintenance. And schedule is pre-planned, and corrective is for small challenges which may be delayed, not require immediate attention. If it required immediate attention, it does not fall into corrective, it falls into rescue or firefighting maintenance. Every time you are maintaining a system, the document needs to be updated, which I have already told you, it's a kind of version control. Correct? And maintenance should not be done directly. It has to be approved by management. There has to be a systemic way for implementation. Is that clear? So that is the entire SDLC part. And there are certain development approaches. With the time constraints, I might not be able to discuss these, but you must know that there are these approaches which are stated in your module. At least 3 questions come from this. So before going forward, at least in today's night, make sure you are aware about waterfall, prototype, incremental, spiral. Re-engineering and reverse engineering is something which I feel like is important, along with agile methodology. So these 2 approaches are, from my perspective, seems to be important for Make sure these are very well known to you. Then today, if you talk about the development of those things or development of a system in a systematic manner, you talk about certain, these are not, let me tell you, these are not software, these are documented tools which helps you out, which is involving development and operation part. Because successful implementation of a system depends on two things: development of system and operation of system. So DevOps are the documentation which are there used for synchronizing the development and operation part. But as today, security plays an important role. So rather than DevOps, we have shifted to DevSecOps, wherein security plays an important role. So development, security, and ops becomes DevSecOps. And now rather than normal SDLC, it has become what? A secure SDLC. So do not get into detail of this. There can be less questions. But today, rather than a normal system development process, we are talking about secure SDLC. And rather than a normally only development and operational synchronization, we are talking about development, operational, and security as an integral part while talking about the entire process of development. Okay. Apart from that, there are certain application controls because it is an application which is being developed, right? Because whatever automation is what you are developing an application. So with every application, there are certain risks: boundary risk, input risk, processing risk, output risk, and storage risk. With all these respective risks, you need to put up the respective controls. Correct? So cryptography is a boundary risk, logical access is a boundary risk. Making a validation check into a field, like only numbers to be entered, only alphabet to be entered, the date should not go beyond 31. These are input risk. Processing risk also includes person who is processing must be authorized to go for processing. At the same time, if something goes wrong during processing, then there has to be an error exception file which is framed. So framing of error exception file is a processing control. Output should not be go out of the organization, should not be distributed unwantedly to certain individuals. Illegal copy and display of the output should be removed or eliminated as much as possible. That is output risk. And when it comes to storage, today, as you all know, that data is not deleted. Fine, because if data is deleted, the data analytics would not happen. So making sure that storage is in the right format, your storage capacity are expanding gradually, and to withstand that storage capacities, we are having the parallel processing capabilities as well. So that is called storage related issues, and you have to make sure that all risks with all these must be known to the control part. So you have this in your module, and I request you all to make sure that I have tried my effort best to cover up maximum topics in the time allotted. But now let's talk about at least few questions. And if participants are ready, we can solve these questions. Viniji?
Yes, I request all the participants, if you have any question, please come on the chat box.
I think, Viniji, it's only you, Mr. Ayaz, Mr. Nakul, and Suri sir who are there.
Yes, maybe. Yes, it's a closed conversation, I guess.
No problem. So let me just quickly tell that what are the key aspects of question solving. Let's focus on that. Make sure you are reading a question perfectly. That is the first thing. Entire question needs to be read perfectly. Now, when you are reading a question, make sure you are having at least a pen or a pencil in your hand and marking some keywords. Marking those keywords. Identification of keywords in a question paper is the very important thing. Once you are able to identify the keywords, you know on what basis the answer needs to be framed. Once identify the keywords, then apply your logic. Apply your logic in terms of auditor's logic and a part of technical logic as well to solve a question. If these three things are working, you will be able to find out the right answer. If not, then you can look forward for third thing, which is called reverse approach. That is, if you are unable to identify the right question, go for a reverse approach. That means eliminate the wrong options. So if you are able to identify the keywords, I am sure at least two options you will be able to discard from the below options, because those two options by default will be called odd one out options. So that means it's only 50-50 chances, and then a bit of logic can help you out in solving the questions. Make sure you are having decent timeline. So it's 240 minutes for 200 questions. So it's around one, which is around 85 seconds, which is decent enough, dear, which is decent enough. Don't rush up. Reason being, if you talk this with IIT, JEE or NEET, you have less than a minute to solve a question wherein calculation is also required. Here, there is no calculation, no arithmetical, mathematical formulas to be applied on. You just have to read down the question, right? Another thing, it's completely objective, you all know, and there is no negative marking. So make sure in the last few minutes timeline, you must be able to solve the questions systematically. So just to add on, let me just tell you a few things. Make sure for at least first 2.5 hours, your focus is to only solve questions. Don't, this is my perception, although you can differ into it, or maybe Kapil Suri sir may also differ in opinion to me. My focus is in first 2.5 hours, just solve the questions. Do not go into marking. Do not go into marking for first 2.5 hours. After that, devote at least 30 minutes time to mark everything into the answer sheet in a very systematic manner. Now, why I am saying so? Because you may solve question number 1, 2, you may have 3 and answer 4. While you are answering, by mistake, in a hurry, you will answer 1, 2, and 3 rather than 4. So entire sequence goes off, effort goes wiped out. So first 2.5 hours, only questions. Next 30 hours, marking all these questions here. But in 2.5 hours, make sure you have solved at least 120 plus questions, minimum 120 plus questions. And last 1 hour, go real time, solve a question, mark it immediately, solve a question, mark it immediately, solve a question, mark it immediately. And in last 10 minutes, make sure no question should be left unanswered. No question should be left unanswered. Take advantage of no negative marking and make sure you are answering everything. Maybe tukka, maybe whatever, but make sure you are answering, because you never know, even a single marks can give you a clear-cut degree certificate for it. Okay, so that's all from me, Vinny ji. Any question from you or maybe Nakul sir side? I am open to answer.
So you have described everything so brilliantly. Maybe other members, I request other members, if you have any query, please come forward. I think you have covered everything. And
I tried to cover everything, Viniji.
I was just, it is amazed to see that you have covered everything in 1.5 hours. So, yes.
Anyway, so we are well on time. So I have taken around 1.5 hours of mine to discuss everything, although I want to discuss at least 20 odd questions, 20, 30 questions. But as participants are not there, so I think it becomes all me only to talk about questions and all. I have already given some key things to be taken care of while answering a question. So make sure you are reading the proper question without going into hurry. Make sure you are marking certain keywords into it. Logic needs to be applied thereafter. And if no, then go for a reverse approach.
Okay.
Right. So, Suri sir, if you are here. Suri sir.
Yes, Saurabh, I'm here. I'm listening you carefully.
Right,
very nice.
You don't have to listen me carefully. You are more learned.
No. Very nicely you covered. It's a good brush up. Vineet has appreciated in the nice way that in 90 minutes you cover up.
Anyway, sir, so you can open up your camera and now the platform is yours. So if you want, you can take a break of around 5-10 minutes, or maybe you can begin immediately.
I don't want to take much because their countdown is already started.
Yeah.
Because in less than 12 hours, the people have to face the paper now.
Correct, sir. But let me tell you, there's just a single question which has been asked somebody. So differential backup and incremental backup. Dear, incremental backup is whenever you are taking the backup of whatever is newly added from the last full backup. And if you are taking a backup in which newly added plus modified data is also included, that becomes a differential backup. Right, Suri sir?
Absolutely.
Ayaz, you cannot mark your answer in the question paper in a very bold numbers, but I request you can take some green pen and so you can keep some dots out there, which is not recognizable. Only you will be able to do that. So rather than having a pencil, have a pen which is of a different color. Although in answer you have to have your pencil to do that. So have a green color pen which is easily identified. You can put up a dot at some of the other keywords and answer sheets in your question paper. You can do that. Not sir, much.
These are the questions from the users. Ayaz is, I guess, is just passing on the questions. There is
Okay.
one more question. Sometimes there are questions in which all options are related to security, but deciding most important is a little confusing.
Preventive. If
What
there
should
are
be
four
our
options,
answer?
if there are four options with respect to security, focus on preventive security first, then secondary is detective, and then comes to corrective security aspects. First is prevention, dear. We all have gone for vaccination only for prevention. Otherwise, detection and correction measure was already available from day one to all of us.
Tips for appearing during exam, right or wrong things.
Pardon, please.
Tips for appearing during exam.
I have already given. So timeline bifurcation, I have tried to give it out. First 2.5 hours for what, next 30 minutes for what, and last 1 hour for what. And only focus on keywords, understanding the question. Don't rush up. Don't add another thing into your own IQ or your own something into the question. Treat it as it is. Don't add +1 or -1 to the question. It happens to the chartered accountant, they assume something. Do not assume. Take the question as it is stated in the question paper.
So, antivirus is preventive, detective, or corrective control?
It is all three. It is all three. Because antivirus is not only helping you out in preventing any attack, but it is also detecting if there is a virus attack and try to clean that as well. But primarily, it is a preventive control. Mark word, if it is primarily control, it has to be preventive. Okay, although it is all three.
How to practice question as questions are not from question bank?
No, questions are there from question bank, lot of. And if you want, we can share a few more question bank, as Suri sir is already there. He is having a question bank of more than, I think, he keep on sharing more than 1 lakh questions are there with him. So he can keep on sharing, but point is that last minute, last 12 hours, what best you can do is make sure that you are understanding the logic of IT and audit. Fine, because questions are based on logic, not of too much technical knowledge. Too much technical knowledge. But keywords like reconnaissance, keywords like click jacking, keywords like firewall must be known. Keywords like best and host, keywords like different types of firewalls. So these will be covered up. These will be covered up, and if you keep on searching, you can identify these. So although everybody is having module 3, I think everybody is from DISA 3.0. Your last module, or sorry, your practice manual in which case studies and lab manuals are there. At the last, there is a glossary. Make sure the last minute thing to be done is to read that glossary part. The glossary is all the technical terminologies and the definition of it.
So, exception reports are representative of processing controls or output controls?
Processing controls. Exception reports are related to processing controls.
All right. Done. So we have no more question.
Fine. So the rest all questions can be handled by Suri sir as well. So thank you, Vineet, and thank you, Nakul. I am here on a standby mode. If you want, I can be active thereafter. And Suri sir, I am handing over the platform to you. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
So,
Best of luck.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
so
you.
We have good evening, Dr. Sir, Dr. Kapil Suri sir. We have privilege to have you with us. Let me introduce our eminent speaker who is taking the second session, Dr. Kapil Kumar Suri. So yes. So Dr. Kapil Kumar Suri, let me explain with let me give a brief introduction. He has a work experience of regularly conducted programs for companies like IBM, Oracle, Microsoft, HP, Google, SAP, Deloitte, PwC, KPMG, Mindspace, Mindtree, Infosys, Wipro, HCL, Deloitte, PwC, and many more. He worked as a consultant with Dubai Police, Egypt Telecommunication, Emirates, KNPC, and many more. He is a senior DISA FAFD faculty for the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. In the last 24 years, he has trained thousands of corporate professionals and students around the globe. Along with the corporate profile, he is equally involved and contributing in the academics too. He is associated with many premier technical and B schools of the country and abroad like IIM and IITs. Along with the corporate assignments, he equally involved into sports. Currently, he is a mentor of MP Ranji team and Kings 11. He's a gold medalist in Bachelor of Engineering in Computer Science from SGSITS, Indore, Masters of Technology MTech from IIT Kanpur. He is a gold medalist in Masters of Business Administration from Institute of Management Studies, Indore. He is a certified information system auditor. He awarded with the Best Student Award, Best Faculty Award, Best Trainer Award, and many more. Research papers published at national and international level. Along with the technical, he's also one of the leading trainer in the area of life management system. He's a board and executive member of many institutions and associations in India and abroad. He was a national cricketer player and represented Madhya Pradesh cricket team number of times. So with this, I would like to call Dr. Kapil Suri. Please start the session, sir.
Thank you, Vinayji. Thank you. Thank you. Very nicely you are doing the moderation work, which is the difficult task again to read about. So,
Thank you.
like sort of nicely covered up the many things. So I'll just go because we are not into the training. Definitely in future get that chance, because at this moment I'll consider that all members are thoroughly prepared because countdown is already started. So they are well versed with the whole structure. Now they only concern about that how to crack. Means they are ready, they are already paired up, and my job is which ball they should hit and which ball they should miss, leave while onto the wicket. Is it, Vinayji?
Right, sir.
Yeah. So just the few tips, nothing more than that. And then you people utilize the time because already your countdown is already started. So this is not the time to puzzle or unnecessary confuse yourself, because need required the clarity. So ultimate goal, ultimate target, I hope all of you well versed that minimum requirement defined by the institute to qualify this examination is 60%. So out of 200, minimum target is to score 120. Then there is no limit. And I'm 100% sure that many of you definitely will score 180 plus, or maybe many of you will come near to 200, or maybe somebody can come 200 plus. But how to? Now this entire course is based on only few things. Okay, only few things, whether it is module 1, whether it is module 2, whether it is module 3, whether it is module 4, whether it is module 5, whether it is module 6. Okay, like you don't need to think the paper from IT professional point of view. You people have to think the paper from auditor point of view. Number one, you don't need to think like an IT professional. Just think like an auditor. Okay, and I hope all of you well versed with the different type of audits, whether it is a concrete audit, whether it is a statutory audit, whether it is a stock audit, whether it is a bank audit. That how, what about the role of the auditor? Okay, that is number one, to review, to evaluate, to examine. Okay, and now here the focus area is IS and IT. So there is no mean no existence of IS and IT without business. So business organization objective is equal to IS plus IT implementation. And now, whenever think about the business, it is very simple. Then your focus area with respect to the business organization only over the few things, like which is the strength of each and every business. Number one, each and every business, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is service organization, okay, whether it is banking, whether it is insurance, is strictly follow dedicated business model. Okay, so first of all, your focus area would be the business model, and all these terminologies you will find into the exam. Okay, then number two, with respect to the business model, whenever we'll think about the business model, then business model is nothing but integration of n number of different type of business processes. So just you will find all this, it is very easy. And now whenever the business process executed, it will generate the data. You just see the sequence. Data would be generated. And now into the IES, and the question would come very easy. You will find the question like here with respect to the processes. Okay, like number one, keyword. Again and again, you will find the question like, for example, with respect to a particular business process, who is accountable? That particular business process may be related to the purchase. That particular business process may be related to the procurement. That particular business process may be related to the production. That particular business process may be related to the finance. Okay, so with respect to each and every business process, definitely somebody acting like a process owner, and that process owner we also known as the risk owner. Now here automatically the term comes from the auditor point of view, because under the current scenario, auditor is not only concerned about whenever auditor go for any type of audit, that doesn't matter whether it is IS audit or whether it is concrete audit. Each and every audit at this moments are going on risk-based audit and default. Now, especially here under the IS audit, okay, and during the examination, you have to pay attention. Somewhere into the question, you have to think like an investigator. Okay, think like an investigator, although it is not a forensic audit, but during the IS audit, you have to think like an investigator. And now whenever we'll think like investigator, then from auditor point of view, focus always shift onto the security, and focus shift onto the security, then default focus shift onto the risk. And when focus shift onto the risk, then default focus shift onto the vulnerability and threat. And then there are many questions now here related to this. And I hope all of you thoroughly prepared. But then also, please kindly, this should be clear, whether it is a question is related to the business process, whether the question is related to the database system, whether the question is related to who is going to prepare the database, whether the question is related to who is the owner of the data, whether the question is related to where or how to procure the data. Now, vulnerability always vary from system to system. And number one, the most important part, especially with vulnerability, this should be clear, because many times people are puzzled because there are many questions in which you will find this vulnerability. In many questions, you will find this keyword that is a threat. In many questions, you will find this keyword that is a risk, because in the entire course, module number 1 to module 6, again and again, you will find in each and every module somehow we touch to this 3 term. Now, vulnerability, I hope all of you would agree with me. This is within the organization, and vulnerability is nothing. I hope all of you well versed. That is the weakness into the system. Okay. Now, if it is weakness within the system, so this is internal issue. If this is internal issue, so somebody from the organization is responsible that how to measure the vulnerability. Somebody from the organization is responsible that how to overcome the vulnerability. And then with respect to the vulnerability. If organization unable to, so vulnerability is always, please, whatever the question, whether the question is related to the process, whether the question is related to the data, whether the question is related to the database, whether the question is related to networking, again, whether it is intra-network, whether it is extranet, whether it is intranet, anything, whether the question is related to the user, then again, internal user, external user, your focus area is number one, vulnerability is internal factor. Internal factor. Internal factor means this is within the system. Within the system. And threat is external, outside the system. Outside the system. And now one more thing, until unless there is no vulnerability, until unless there is no vulnerability, then there is no mean, no existence of any threat, because threat always exploit the vulnerability. If there is no weakness in the system, vulnerability means weakness. If there is no weakness, okay, then default system is highly procured. Now, number one, which is, and now from the auditor point of view here, now here the third term. So vulnerability is internal issue. Any organization means any organization. Related to anything means anything with respect to the infrastructure. Now, any organization means any business organization, I hope all of you would agree with me, having control over their business model. Any organization means any organization having control over their business process, because business process created by the business organization, somebody from the organization. So business process, business model are the valuable asset for any business organization. Then again, whatever the data generated, whenever any business process executed, now this data again belongs to the organization. So over this data also, organization having the control. But now here, especially under the current scenario, you people have to focus, like under the current scenario, we are following two type of the business model, and you will find this into the question because you have to correlate. This won't be. Some business processes are running under B2B model, and some business processes are running under B2C. Now, vulnerability with respect to B2B is totally different than the vulnerability with respect to B2C. Okay. And then whenever we'll think about the vulnerability, then default from auditor point of view, there is only one solution. That is control. That is control. Now, what about the nature of the vulnerability? What about the type of the vulnerability? What would be the impact of that vulnerability over the business organization, which is known as BIA? Okay, then according to that, and again, from the control point of view, although there are three types of control, that is external, environmental, and internal. But IS audit, again, the one more thing, IS audit is a type of internal audit. Then again, auditor has to deal maximum with the internal control. And whenever we'll think about the internal control, all of you are well versed that there are three types of control. There is no fourth control, especially with internal control, that is PDC, that is preventive, detective, and corrective. And again, from the auditor point of view, it is always advisable that to mitigate the risk. Now, you just see, concern about vulnerability, concern about threat, but automatically risk would come into the picture. Because what about this risk? Vulnerability is the weakness, and threat is outside, which like to exploit the vulnerability. But what about this risk? Risk, whenever we start any business cycle, maybe at the low level, maybe with respect to the small level business organization, maybe with respect to the cooperative bank, maybe with respect to the mid-sized bank. maybe with respect to the large bank like State Bank of India, under the umbrella of which then now total 9 banks exist, whether the business cycle with respect to the PNB. Now risk again vary from organization to organization, because size of one business organization is not equal to size of the another business organization. Similarly, the type of vulnerability. Now, what about this risk? Whenever we'll think about risk, it should be clear. Risk is always uncertainty. Always uncertainty. Always uncertainty. Uncertainty means anything, means each and every business organization like to execute their business process in a proper sequence, in a proper order. Okay, they defined a proper process model, but suddenly crisis occurred, anything which is uncertain. Okay, now no organization means no organization can able to predict that which type of risk would able to affect the organization. But each and every organization at the beginning of each and every business cycle, even with, because now data is the lifeline and technology is the driver, and data and technology both going to be the valuable asset, because here whenever we use this term IS, then with respect to the IS, focus area is data and information. That's why here we more concern about database. And whenever think about this IT, then focus area is hardware, focus area is software, and focus area is networking. Please kindly just concentrate. It is very simple, very simple. So now, and again, there is one more thing. Like with respect to each and every business process, there is a process owner and this process owner, technically from auditor point of view, I hope all of you would agree, we also known as the risk owner. Okay, and this risk owner means accountable person, means he or she would be responsible if anything uncertain happened with respect to any business process, then red flag according to auditor would be raised. Okay, so to mitigate, so whenever we'll think about the risk here, we always concern about only one thing, that is the probability. That's why it is also known as likelihood, probability. And mathematically there is a formula. Mathematically there is a formula to compute risk. Now from the auditor point of view, whenever the auditor concern about vulnerability, whenever the auditor concern about the threat, whenever the auditor concern about the risk, now the question come related to which and how to measure, because until unless auditor is not aware of related to which or how to measure, because into the question you will find this only, then auditor unable to suggest that which control would be the effect, because auditor has to perform the control assessment. Okay, now control always we define according to the type of vulnerability, control always we define according to the type of the threat, control always we define according to the type of the risk. So here auditor always concern about A means asset. Now with respect to any business organization, now from the examination point of view, assets are, please kindly just concentrate. Number one asset is business process. Now this business process, some business processes are standard and some business processes are critical and some business processes are highly critical. Now if business process is critical and one of the business process is highly critical, because here you have to apply LOGIC and BISION, that how to differentiate between the standard process and the critical process and highly critical, because due to the change of nature of the business process, percentage of vulnerability would also change, and due to the change of percentage of vulnerability, risk associated with respect to the process would also change. Okay, so number one asset is business process. Number two asset with respect to any business organization, especially from IAS auditor point of view, and their number of question is the data. And now whenever think about the data, then you will find the many question. Data, whenever the data generated, then default for each and every data, definitely there is some business process executed. Now, whenever the business process executed, then default somebody acting like a data source. Now, who is this data source? Now, this data source may be a vendor. This data source may be a warehouse. This data source may be a point of sale. This data source may be a customer. Okay. Now, with respect to the banking, this customer may be a personal banking. This customer may be a corporate banking. Okay. Now, with respect to the regional manager, branch manager under the banking system, according to RBI, is acting like a data source. So you have to, first of all, focus that under which scenario is defined under that question. Okay. And then accordingly, you have to judge that who is acting like a data source. Okay. Now, here there is one more thing. You will find the question related to data source also, and you will find the question related to data owner also. And I hope all of you would agree with me. It is not necessary that every data source is also be the owner of the data. Like, for example, with respect to the banking system, according to RBI, KYC is mandatory. Okay. Now, KYC contain the data related to the customer. So who is the owner of the data? Customer is the owner of the data. Okay. And data would be recorded by the bank, and bank technically acting like a data custodian. Now, please kindly just concentrate. Now, automatically, this is a process according to the RBI, and this is a process according to the banking system, that according to the governing body, it is mandatory that each and every bank must to maintain the KYC with respect to each and every customer. That doesn't matter whether the customer is availing personal banking facility or whether the customer is availing corporate banking, or whether the customer is having only the saving account, whether the customer having the current account, whether the customer, now it is mandatory even with respect to the DMAT also, from according to SEBI, which is another regulator from last. Okay, now customer is the owner of the data. Bank recorded the data, and bank now become a data custodian. And maximum data breach, you will find the question. You just see how the questions would come. Now you will find the one question related to data owner. Another question you will find related to data source. Now, what about here data source? Now, from the auditor point of view, kindly just pay attention. It is very easy. Just you have to focus on to the question, because just one line or two line statement question, somewhere you will find 3-line statement. Okay. And strictly follow the standard. This is my fundamental tips. Strictly follow the same pattern which you people were following till date since school days. First of all, go through the question paper. There is no harm. There is no harm. 4 hours, 240 minutes, like Saurabh already elaborated, so I'm not going to. It's quite sufficient time. So fundamental practice which we are following since the school days, there is no harm to go through the question paper. And I'm 100% sure that out of 200 question, 100 to 150 question, you will find yourself comfortable if you are thoroughly prepared till date. It is not, I'm not. People, those who just started, I'm not giving any version related to, but people, those who are honestly preparing from last couple of weeks, at least from last 1 month, or maybe some of you are preparing since day one, you joined this course, maybe from last 6 months, maybe from last 3 months, then I honestly consider that those people are really thoroughly prepared. Okay. So out of 200, 100 to 150 question very easily. Now it's remaining the 50 question. Okay. But please just go through each and every question carefully, because what the examiner, now examiner may be me, examiner may be Sarab, examiner may be somebody else. Okay, now data would remain the data. Data custodian would remain the data custodian. Data owner would remain the data owner. Database would remain the database. All these things are standard, just like the mathematics. Means nobody can able to manipulate. Okay, but you have to apply the logic. In which context, in which scenario, because auditor is what I mentioned, review, evaluate. If everything is already explained to auditor in advance, then what is the role of the auditor? Because auditor is always acting like a tester. Okay, at the end of the business cycle, auditor come into the role and check the productivity, check the efficiency, check the effectiveness, check the security, check the loophole, check the vulnerability, which even the business owner unable to trace out, the one who is onto the driver's seat. So from that point of view, if your approach, honestly, even with respect to this examination from the auditor point of view, according to me, you will find yourself comfortable. No need to. That's why I'm not sharing, because we are not here into the training mode. So I'm not sharing anything that how to, because those of you already interacted, you know I need time to explain, and every module is very vast. So I'm just touching how to tips. Okay, how to clear. It is very easy. So just focus. Now, what about here data source? Now, from the auditor point of view, auditor is doing the audit of a particular bank. Okay, now auditor, while performing the audit, maybe the bank audit. Okay, now you are during the audit of the bank, you are performing analysis over the customer data. Now customer data recorded by the bank. So for auditor, bank is acting like a data source. Okay, but data belongs to the customer, because definitely during the audit, I hope those of you, and I hope almost all of you, perform at least one bank audit, and some of you, those who are highly experienced from last 2 decades, 3 decades, they perform n number of. Okay, so they all would agree with my this version that in KYC, according to RBI, now there are number of things would come. RBI is governing body, so you have to focus. What about, and you should be clear. Yes, governing body. So governing body is responsible for direction. Governing body is responsible for monitoring. Governing body is responsible for control. Governing body is responsible for compliance. And direction means policy. Direction means guidelines. Direction means standard. Direction means procedure. All this would be defined by the governing body. Okay. And management body is responsible only for execution. Management body is responsible only for the implementation purpose. Okay. So now here, people, those who are working at the branch level, people, those who are working at any organization level. So the question is related to the governance, or whether the focus area is related to the management. First of all, you identify this. Okay. That focus is related to what? Now, once it is clear, so if it is related to governance, then governance always responsible to create the control. Governance is not responsible to implement the control. Okay, governance is responsible to create the control. Governance is responsible to create the policy. Okay, so now policy created by, and then the governance is responsible to perform the monitoring, that whether at the management level people are following. Now auditor has to just review this, that people, whatever the operation, even using the IS and IT, because now business is enabled with IS and IT, but ultimate goal, ultimate objective of the business would remain the same. There is no change. Okay, so whatever the policy governing body define with respect to the standard business process, now definitely they update the control, definitely they update the policy, because now business is running via technology. Now the processes, now with respect to the banking process for the payment purpose, one process is IMPS, another is RTGS. Okay, from the customer point of view, customer can perform the transaction. Okay, but these are the different process. Now who is the owner? Now what about here? Data source. Auditor, just quickly, during the KYC, customer is the owner, bank is the custodian, and for auditor, bank is the data source. Now bank is the primary source or secondary source? Again the question. Now, if auditor able to retrieve data directly from the customer, then customer would be the primary source. But data of customer means whatever the transaction performed by the customer, auditor during the time of audit collecting that data from the bank. Okay, so bank is what? The secondary source. Please kindly just go with it. Is very simple. It is very simple. Similarly, now here another thing, I hope all of you well, that's why I'm just using, I'm considering that all of you are thoroughly prepared. Okay, now organization generated the data. Okay, and now they already organize or procure this data in the form of the database. Okay, and before preparing the database, they store the data. Okay, and to store the data, now here again the question is, what about the nature of the data? Because under the current scenario, although data is the lifeline, but now data is converted into the big data. And whenever we use the term big data, then big data is equal to structured data plus semi-structured data plus unstructured data. And whenever we'll think about the structured data, please kindly just concentrate. It is very simple and you will find the question. Structured data always represented in the tabular form. Structured data is always represented like one table contain the data related to the customer, another table contain the data related to transaction, another table contain the data related to the services. So this is the structured data. Okay, now the question is here, second form of the data, which is the semi-structured. Now all of you daily basis dealing, and their number of question would come, like whenever final reports you upload, either with respect to the Central Board of Direct Taxes or Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Custom, those which are the governing body with respect to direct taxation as well as indirect taxation, then always you upload the report either in the form of JSON, XML. So if data is in the form of JSON, XML, HTML, PDF, CSV, this form of data is semi-structured, and the volume of this data is much more than. Now from where this data is coming and why it is advisable? Okay, because question is to minimize the size, efficiency, or question is related to the security of the data. Now third form of the data which is generated via devices, machines, data which is generated via CCTV, biometric, ATM machines, cash deposit machine, card swiping machine, QR. This data is in graphical, social media, unstructured data. Okay, now this total volume of data is known as the big data here. Now who is responsible to manage this data? Who is responsible? Who will decide where to keep which data? Because under the current scenario, for data storage, and their number of questions would come, kindly just concentrate, because these are the controls. Okay, now although everywhere it won't be mentioned control, but ultimately it is a control. Okay, because segregation of job roles, segregation of job duties. Okay, with respect to the internal manpower, like low level, middle level, and the top level, this is a one type of a segregation of duties, segregation of job role. Similarly here with respect to the data, more and more we segregate it. Okay, where to keep which data, then this is a one type of a control. Although in the question everywhere you won't find the term control, but ultimately we are asking question to an auditor, then focus area is that auditor must perform risk assessment. And I hope all of you were thoroughly cleared and thoroughly aware of that whenever we'll think about the risk assessment, and this you have to apply with respect to each and every question. This is my humble request, because whenever we'll think about the risk assessment, number one, from the auditor point of view, we concern about risk identification. And whenever think about the risk identification, then auditor always think about which type of asset. Okay, now asset is process or asset is data? Asset is process or asset is data, or asset is now data storage? Because when this data is transferred into the container, okay, into the data storage, now single unit, in place of the single unit of data, the place where the container in which we keep the entire volume of the data with respect to any business organization. Now that going to become more valuable asset. So now risk associated, vulnerability associated, threat associated with respect to that asset would be totally different than the threat which is associated from where the data is generated. Okay. And now where to keep the data? Where to keep the data? Storage. There are number of questions, maybe 15-20 questions you will find related to this. And those of you all earlier also attempted, they all agree with my this version. Okay. Now who is responsible to decide where to keep which data? Because under the current scenario for data storage purpose, just to save the time, I'm verbally, then you people able to utilize me maximum. There are two types of storage. One is physical storage, another is cloud storage. Okay. Now physical storage is within the control of the business organization. Vulnerability associated with respect to the physical container is always minimum. Okay. But under the current scenario, each and every organization always evaluated productivity on the basis of 3 parameters. Again, please, this is my humble request. Always think about if question is related to productivity efficiency, please focus onto this 3 parameter. Number one, Q, number 2 C, and number 3 T. Quality, cost, and time. And quality always having maximum weightage with respect to cost. And now the challenge is organization want to enhance, improve the quality, but parallel want to cut down the input cost. And T here is the time, and this is not a normal time. This is a lead time. Okay. Because on the basis, and there is one more 4th parameter also, that is W, which is a wastage. There should not be any leakage, optimum utilization of resources. Broadly, there are 3, but 4th is additional. Now, what about here? One is physical storage, another is cloud storage. Okay. And cloud storage, we also known as the virtual storage. Okay. And whenever we'll think about the virtual storage or the cloud storage, I hope all of you would agree with me. Default in each and every cloud storage, third-party service provider would be involved. That may be AWS, that may be Azure, that may be Google Cloud, that may be IBM Cloud, that may be Oracle Cloud. Now, in any business, more and more in any business with respect to any business process, if third party is providing the support, third party is executing the business process. Now, why? Because under the current scenario, each and every business organization is a part of a supply chain management. So in each and every business, you will find there are number of vendors are involved. There are number of third-party service providers are involved. Okay. But role of one third-party service provider is different than the another third-party service provider. And 1/3, which type of services organization is availing. Now, for data storage purpose, the organization now here is availing the services, and data is a valuable asset. Okay. And now third-party service provider is providing the container in which organization can keep the data. Okay. And data is the valuable asset. So now here the question is the control which need now to focus here. Now cloud is further classified, whether it is a private, public, or hybrid. So in this manner, you have to just analyze onto these are the key terms, because physical storage is totally under the control over the third party service provider. All the organization can able to minimize their input cost, but risk would be maximum. So now the question is come, although the third party service provider is providing the services with respect to the data storage, but control would be implemented by the business organization, or control would be implemented or defined by the third party service provider. And now who is responsible for data organization? Who is responsible to prepare the database? Who is responsible for the data storage? So there is only one key person over which you will find number of questions. These are the process owner here with respect to the IT infrastructure. There are number of questions you will find related to DBA, number of questions you will find related to DA, number of question you will find related to SA, number of question you will find related to NA, and number of question you will find related to user level. Now this user may be internal or external. Okay, now you have to think again with respect to the internal, whether the user is at low level, middle level, or the top level. External, which level of the customer? So customer is the standard customer or the privileged customer. Okay, now here this DBA, SA, and NA, we also known as process owner, we also known as risk owner. And DBA with respect to SA and NA is highly sensitive, because the role of the DBA would be much more sensitive with respect to SA and NA. Means whenever we'll think about data storage, whenever we'll think about data organization means database. So any issue related to the database, any issue related to where to keep which data, please kindly just concentrate. Any question, any issue that if question would come, that organization till date is working under the Tally environment. Now organization is planning to migrate from Tally to ERP. Okay, now the big challenge is data migration. So who is responsible? Now this is the job of the DBA. This is the job of the DBA. Now here, any question related to the data, related to database. So any issue related to database would be handled by DBA. Okay, any question that user level privileges, access right, accessibility of the user with respect to the database, again would be handled by DBA, because acting like a controller with respect to the database. Okay, now SA, any issue related to hardware, any issue related to software. Means if the question is like this, organization till date is using a particular type of server. Okay, and now organization planning to migrate to higher configuration server. Okay, means now when organization decided to migrate from Tally to ERP, and again with respect to the ERP, especially SAP, then default organization must to upgrade their hardware infrastructure, organization must to upgrade their software infrastructure. Now any issue related to hardware or software, and please one more thing, procurement of hardware software, installation of hardware software, configuration of hardware software, migration from one hardware to another hardware, migration from one software to another software. Okay, interface between one hardware to another hardware, interface between one software to another software. Okay, access right to the user, that a particular user can only able to access a particular hardware, particular user can able to access a particular type of software application. Like within the organization, all the different SAP modules are running, but again it is not necessary that each and every internal user having the privilege to access. So who will define? Now this is the question not related to the data, this is the question not related to the database, this is the question related to hardware issue, related to the software issue. So the type of control would be implemented. And again, the most important part, okay, where people are puzzled, DBA, SA, NA, they all are working at the management level. They are not working at the governance level. So they only perform control and policy implementation, but they are not responsible to create the control. They are not responsible to create the policy. DBA always coordinate with CIO, that is Chief Information Officer, coordinate with CFO coordinate with CEO, or somewhere CFO and CEO would be the dual role. Then CFO, CEO coordinate with the steering committee. Okay, a steering committee which we define down the line to the board of directors. Then a steering committee coordinate with the board of directors, and board of directors are responsible to design or develop the control and the policy framework. DBA only perform the implementation. Similarly, with respect to the hardware and software, SA always coordinate with CTO, Chief Technology Officer. Chief Technology Officer again coordinate with the CFO, then CEO, then steering committee, and then board of directors. Okay. Now, any issue here with respect to structure of the table, because there are number of questions would come. Who is responsible? Like this is the key term. Many times I heard people are puzzled. Who is responsible to create the primary key with respect to the table? Because without primary key, we are unable to communicate with any table. Okay. And primary key question, or definitely you will find, because it is a logical control. Okay. Without primary key, and it is a one type of a data field which contain unique value, not null. Okay. So now the question will come, who is responsible to create the primary key? Who is responsible to create the foreign key? Who is responsible to create the relationship? Who is responsible to create the structure of the table? Who structure of the table we also known as schema. And these are the repeated question. Whether I am going to set the paper or anybody else in the world with related to IS and IT, these are the fundamentals. Anybody means anybody want to ask you. These are the standard. If you honestly prepare and just focus in. So now question is related to structure of the database. Then who is responsible person? That is DA, that is data administrator. If the question is related to where to keep the data, who is having authorization, who is having privilege to access a particular database server. So this is related to DBA. This is related to the DBA. And now even the one more question would come. DBA having more privileges or DA having? DA always reporting to DBA, and privileges of DA also defined by DBA. Okay. Then here again, they both able to communicate via one language, that is SQL. Please kindly just concentrate. These are the key term. Maybe somewhere 40-50 question you will find only related to DA, DBA in different form. Maybe not directly you will find that in every question DA or DBA would be there, but definitely the question would be there, because the backbone of any IS and IT infrastructure is database. Okay. Then here, under the current scenario, each and every organizations are working under the ERP environment, and under the ERP, we are using the centralized database, okay, which works on to JIT principle, right information, right user at the right time. Okay. But here, parallel, like Saurabh already explained, you highlighted, that is CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Okay. But whenever we think about confidentiality, it always comes the preventive control. Now, with respect to the network, again, there are broadly two types of the network. And network administrator, any issue now related to the network, please kindly concentrate. Again, there are minimum 25 to 40 questions related to the network in different form, because maximum vulnerability with respect to any IS IT infrastructure from any IS auditor point of view would exist into the network. Then afterwards, system level into the hardware and software, and then comes to the database. This is the 4 layer. Number 1, top user. Number 2, network. Number 3, system. And number 4, database. And in this manner, we define or implement the control. Okay. Now, what about here into the network? One network is connection oriented. Another network is connectionless. Now, connection oriented, it is always advisable via the cable network. Now, vulnerability associated with this. Now, who will decide which user, which device, which machine would be the part of the connection oriented, and which machine would be the part of the connectionless? All this framework would be defined at the IT governance level. Okay. Now, network administrator is again just like the DBA, just like SA is a process owner, risk owner. But network administrator is not responsible to provide any solution related to hardware or software. Network administrator is not responsible to provide any solution related to data, related to database, related to the database storage. Please just focus into the question. Although into the, because exam is MCQ, all 4 answers would be correct, but which one is most appropriate? That's why in many questions you will find keyword most, you will find not. And please, this is again my humble request. Just you should be calm, focus, because sometimes what happen under the excitement, yes, but the question is not yes, question is which one is not. Okay, so you have to pay attention. It is not necessary that everywhere question is asking that who is responsible. Somewhere in many questions you will find who is not responsible. So not, most are the keyword even from the examination point of view, especially into the DISA. Okay, now here connection oriented and network, you will find many questions related to the protocol. Now protocol is set of rules and regulation. Now in connection oriented, it is a standard. We always use the protocol, that is TCP. In connectionless, it is a standard that we use the protocol UDP. Okay, in connection oriented, always the cable network. In connectionless, always the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and the range of Wi-Fi is maximum. Okay, so Wi-Fi having maximum flexibility, but again from the auditor point of view, risk associated, vulnerability associated, threat associated with respect to the Wi-Fi network would again be maximum. So the type of control from IAS auditor point of view, because the question would come like this, not directly the Wi-Fi, question like this, intranet, question like this, extranet, question like this, internet. So whenever intranet, we known as the local area network, issue again related to, then again we implement the effective control. There are number of questions would come like related to IP address policy. And IP address, I hope all of you know, it is a one type of a logical preventive control to mitigate the risk. Now IP address policy, Vinay ji, just few minutes. मैंने देख लिया आपका face, I observe. Okay.
Sir, basically we have with us chairman, so
okay. Nanda Sahab is with us.
Oh, Kapil ji, please isko khatam kariye. Please finish what you are doing. I am waiting. No issues. Please do that.
No, Nanda Sahab.
नहीं, Kapil ji, please. I'm sorry, I have interrupted. I was traveling, so I just got in. आप अभी जो पढ़ा रहे हैं खत्म करिए, मैं वेट करूँगा, फिर हम बात करेंगे. Please.
So
please,
kind of you, so humble, Nanda ji, so humble. Okay. So into the network, please kindly just focus whether the question is related to the intra network. Then again, with respect to the intra network, the policy which we defined with respect to the local network. Okay, now it is always defined one control, that is the network segmentation, network zoning. Okay, now who is responsible with respect to the private network IP address policy? Who is responsible for the public network? So now here all this terminology should be clear, whether the question is related to the public network, whether the question is related to the private network, whether the question is related to intra-network, whether the question is related to extranet, whether the question is related to internet. Then here again, which type of IP address policy you would advise. Okay, because IP address policy with respect to the database server would be different. IP address policy with respect to switch would be different. And this is a powerful preventive control to mitigate the risk. Then again, the question here fundamental with respect to those which are regularly asked. Terminology like bridge, terminology like gateway. Now bridge is nothing. When we interface, when we define the interface between one department to another department within the homogeneous network, within the two intra-network, then now here port to port communication. Then here again, the one more question, you just see. Now if suppose organization is using the web server, then the question would come, default, what would be the port number? You just see all this issue, default port number of web server is 8080. So all this issue, any question related to the network, this is the concern area related to the network administrator. Please just pay the attention. It is very easy. It is very easy. Now, user, we connect with the network. User, we connect with the hardware and software. User, we connect with the database. So now, here you have to focus that into the question. Question is related to the user privilege with respect to the network, or user privileges with respect to the hardware or software, or user privilege with respect to the data storage or user privilege with respect to the database server, then accordingly, you have to think about who is going to play the key role, whether the DBA, whether the SA, or whether the NA. Okay, then this is my simple or humble request, because we are not here into the learning mode. Just anyhow, your target here, not anyhow means with the preparation. Anyhow, that doesn't mean unethical practice. Anyhow means you must to crack, because this is the target why this initiative had taken under the leadership of Nanda Saab to organize this, because this is the first time, I think, in the history of DAP, in the morning exam is scheduled, and in the night I'm giving the tips that how to pad up and how to bat onto the crease. Just like a Rahul Dravid, I'm playing the role. So my role is very crucial according to Nanda Saab at this moment. Let me hand over to Nanda Saab. Okay, thank you. Any query you people free to ask in between. Any query you people can ask, because now I hand over to Nanda ji. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, we have with us, thank you so much, sir. Firstly, I would like to thank Dr. Kapil Suri, sir, for giving such a brief and brilliant, the seminar, for taking the seminar and giving the brief
No,
details
this is not
about
seminar, tips.
yeah,
My
it's
dear
a
agenda
webinar.
is tips.
It's so I would like to introduce chairman of DAB, that is Digital Accounting Assurance Board, CA Charanjot Singh Nanda ji. Sir, CA Charanjot Singh Nanda ji is a Central Council member, 25th Council of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, 2022 and 25. He is presently a chairman in Digital Accounting Assurance Board, Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Internal Audit Standards Board, Committee on Information Technology of South Asian Federation of Accountants. He is holding a vice chairman, Banking, Financial Services and Insurance Committee, ICAI. He was a member of the Central Council he was a member of the Central Council of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India from 2004 to 2016 and 2019-2022. He is a chairman of the following committees of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India: Committee on Management Accounting, Committee on Internal Audit, Committee for Members in Industry, Women Members Empowerment Committee, Committee for Cooperatives and NPO Sectors, Committee on Banking, Insurance and Pensions, Committee on Financial Markets and Investor Protections, Continuing Professional Education Committee, Public Relation Committee and Research Committee. He was a vice chairman of following committees of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India: Public Finance and Government Accounting Committee, Continuing Professional Education Committee, Corporate Social Responsibility Committee, Banking, Financial Services and Insurance Committee, and Research Committee.
Thank you so much, Kohli sir. I would just like to speak because the session is in progress.
Yes.
So if
Okay,
you
I would
permit,
I would like to hand over the mic to you, sir. Please give a words of wisdom.
Thank you so much, Viniji, for such a wonderful introduction. I am really thankful to Dr. Kapil Suri, the learned faculty of the day, for being so indulgent at this last moment and giving advice to our members how they could qualify this examination. Ladies and gentlemen, my salutations and greetings to you. I'm sorry I'm traveling, therefore I could not come on time. I had a seminar which I was addressing at that time. I am in Faridabad branch, and in Faridabad, we had a student conference where I was the conference director, and I had a session also. So my apologies for that. I just took this opportunity to wish good luck to all of you. I want that all should qualify ISA examination. I want to tell you one thing very candidly. Technology has a great role to play not only in our personal lives, but in our professional lives. That traditional professional opportunities are dwindling. And this is the time when you can step in and have newer opportunities. And technology will give you abundant such opportunities where you can create value and worth. You are all aware that we chartered accountants work hard without any expectation of people praising us. And I'm reminded of a couplet which says, तारीफ की चाहत तो नाकाम लोगों की फितरत है. कपिल जी, तारीफ की चाहत तो नाकाम लोगों की फितरत है, काबिल लोगों के तो दुश्मन भी कायल होते हैं. The way we perform, the way we work, we always have this impetus that the work has to be done, a value add to the clients, initiatives have to be done. It is a very tense time, not taking much of your time. I want to thank Dr. Kapil Suri for stepping in at this time and guiding you. I want to thank Vinit Kohli, the secretary of Jammu branch, the entire Jammu branch, including the secretary, who are taking pains to ensure that such programs are hosted. Just to reassure you that your board is always available at all times to serve you. Feel free to give a call to me, mail to me, WhatsApp to me, write to me. I will ensure that whatever is your expectation shall be taken care of. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I would take your leave. Mr. Suri, you can continue. Thank you, Vinit. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye
Thank
all.
you so
Best
much.
of luck. Bye. Best
Thank
of
you
luck.
so much, sir. So, sir, your mic is mute, I guess.
Now I'm audible.
Yes, audible, sir.
Okay, Viniji, any query from the member end? Because this is the time, let them ask if any query, because we are more into the tips session. Yeah, not into the delivery mode. So that's why I'm
Sir.
more here if any query, because they need required the cool mind, they need required the clarity, they won't be puzzled. They all should be calm, quiet and relaxed just before examination, according to me.
Right. So, any person
query?
having any query, please ask, so that it can be addressed well by the speaker, sir.
Yeah.
So, let me open the questions. Sir, we have some questions.
Yeah, please.
Let me copy and write it down to your chat box.
Yeah, please.
There, what is the difference between a cold site and hot site?
Oh, very good. Now here, number one, this is concerned with the infrastructure. This is not related to, although term is site, SIT, but this is not related to the website. Okay, this is related to the infrastructure. Now, any business organization, suppose they implemented the database server, they implemented web server, they implemented application server, they implemented the huge network. Okay, and again, along with this, suppose they're having the backup database server. So there is a huge infrastructure if we consider organization like State Bank of India, HDFC, ICICI Bank. Okay, because now this IS and IT infrastructure is the backbone. Okay, so now all of you are well versed, especially as an auditor, that whenever we'll think about the crisis, then crisis would occur on sudden. Crisis never give prior intimation, and whenever the crisis occurred, then at that time also, with respect to any business organization want to maintain the continuity. Okay, means no organization want to disturb, but parallel organization want to perform the recovery. So in the hot side, cold side, and the warm side, hot side, identical infrastructure. Like for example, right now, all of us able to see Vinit ji at this moment, that whatever the infrastructure Vinit ji has defined with respect to his office, okay, including the Lakshmi ji background to him, and a lot of dhan is coming. Okay, so whatever the infrastructure he defined into his office, suppose due to some uncontrolled natural calamity, okay, some crisis occurred, but parallel he want to maintain the continuity, and now parallel in advance he already created the identical infrastructure just like his office, okay, in-house. So that is known as the hot site. But in hot site there is a huge investment. The only attraction of the hot site, that hot site is within the organization, belongs to the business organization, maximum cost is involved. Question would definitely come like this, but minimum risk. Okay, now each and every organization don't have the same type of capacity to invest with respect to this BCP plan, because this come under the BCP. Okay, but what about into the cold site? Now in place of in-house support, organization taking the third party support. Now in third party, risk would be involved. The only attraction, organization able to minimize, but this again come under the BCP. So the major difference, and both with respect to the infrastructure support, whether it is a network, whether with respect to the database. Now, hot side within the organization, cold side third party. Hot side maximum cost, minimum risk. Cold side minimum cost, maximum risk, and in between the warm side, which is partially cold and partially hot side. So this is what the hierarchy. Yes, Viniji.
We have another question. What is the difference between DA and DBA?
Role of the DBA, if want to design or develop the database structure. Now, first of all, we create a container. Now, this container is not a physical container like a database server. For that purpose, system administrator is responsible. Like for time being, I hope all of you are able to see in my hand, there is a device. For time being, consider that this device is a database server with respect to my organization. So database server is a one type of a storage machine. Okay, so this is a hardware. This would be managed by SA. But to create the database, okay, that is logical container we create, which is again represented in the form of the cylinder. So to create that cylinder, then to create the table, then to define the structure of the table, which is known as the schema, to define the different data field, then with respect to each and every data field, define the respective data type, what according to the nature of the data, which is a one type of a preventive logical control, that one data field contain the value like membership number, another data field contain the data value like Aadhaar number, another data field contain the value like your first name, last name, DOB. So which data value would define as a primary key, which data field would come second, that is the schema. Then after creating the structure of one table, the second table, okay, then again with respect to the second table, again the same practice, which field would be defined as a primary key, then to establish the relationship between the two tables, to create the foreign key, which is the primary key of the first table. Okay, because until unless there is no foreign key, then there is no concept of relationship. Okay, then the type of the relationship, somewhere it is one-to-one, somewhere it is one-to-many, somewhere it is many-to-one, somewhere it is many-to-many. So all this different tasks with respect to the structure of the database would be handled by DA. Okay, but if any issue related to accessibility of the database, like auditor, I'll give you a simple, then you better understood. All of you having experience with the audit. Now, during the time of audit, okay, every organization, especially under the current scenario, provide you one flexibility that you remain in your office using your laptop, using your desktop. You're able to access the database server, you're able to access the data of your client site, which is known as remote access. Now, this privilege to the auditor would be provided by DBA. Okay, but auditor can only able to access the data, but unable to alter or modify the data. And once the audit time is over, then this privilege would be withdrawal, rollback by the business organization, by the DBA. So DBA is responsible with respect to the security. DBA is responsible with respect to the performance of the database. DBA is responsible with respect to migration of the data. So any issue related to the database management would come under the DBA. That's why DBA would define the role of the DBA. But if any question related to the structure of the database, that is handled by the DA. Viniji, I hope. Exception reports are representative of processing control or output control. Very good. Very good. Now, there are three types of process with respect to any information system. Number one, input. Number two, process. Number third, output. Okay. Now, report is always the output. Reports are always the output. So whenever and wherever we are using, because first we capture the data, and there we concern about the quality of the data, we concern about the authentication of the data. So input level controls come under the preventive control. Okay, input level control, then comes the processing level control. Okay, because wherever we perform the data analysis, okay, so data analysis basically perform at the middle level, performed by the MIS system. data capturing by the TPS system, and then here it comes the report generation, which is the output. Now it is not necessary that each and every report would be visualized by each and every end user. So this is the output level control. Oh, very good. Waterfall model, it is a one type of the SDLC model, okay, which is also known as traditional model, which is also known as linear model, which is also known as sequential model, okay, which is also known as rigid model. And now what about into the waterfall model? This is a repeated question. Matlab, I am feeling like that ki paper out kar raha hu main. Okay. Now into the waterfall model, there are total 7 phases are defined. Okay. And each and every total 7 phases, because this is again the repeated question. And each and every phase would be followed by the predecessor phase. And once we executed the successor, we unable to move back. This is the drawback. This is the vulnerability. But what about waterfall model is always advisable with respect to the small project, with respect to, and wherever the problem we already predefined, means we are fixed which type of the solution we are looking for. Okay, that's why waterfall model having the minimum risk, but waterfall model is the rigid model. Yes, that's why now we are using the successor, prototype, and a spiral model. Yeah. And again, one more major drawback question would come in waterfall model. There is no involvement of the customer. There is no involvement of the customer. There is no involvement means customer feedback. Customer is unable to review. Now, if customer unable to review, so it means if suppose at the end when software application is ready and then customer declare that I am not happy with the performance, then there is a huge financial loss from the auditor point of view. Yes, Vinit ji.
Sir, I think we are done with the questions.
Yes.
There is no more question. So
everything is normal. Even into the 200 question, everything will ask normal. We won't ask anything abnormal because I'll consider into the paper that everybody is thoroughly prepared. Yes. And my best wishes to all of you, although I am unable to one-to-one interact with all of you, but this is my best wishes. And tomorrow weekend evening, I'm expecting all of you will definitely going to celebrate that you all would be mentally like this, that you're going to score minimum 180, 190 like this. This is my best wishes to all of you. Baki to Vinit ji, Jai Mata Di is there.
Jai Mata Di, sir.
Which default auditor follows.
I would request definitely please visit Jammu Kashmir.
Definitely, my dear. Since last couple of days in my all the refresher batch, there are couple of people, minimum 2-3 are from Jammu. Today in the morning session, one guy from Udhampur was there. Some Thapa.
Yes.
Yeah, and another guy who just yesterday till into the Gurgaon my refresher batch was Anuj.
Yes.
My dear, there are many. One is already who is following me like anything, Twinkle.
Twinkle.
Right. Yaar, I'm here that Jammu, I know. Yeah, this is what according to institute. So please, auditor has to think like this.
I would definitely request please visit. We will accompany you.
Those of you, those member who are appearing from Jammu, they all will through. We'll all go together, Vaishno Devi.
Sure, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
I hope, Vinit ji, your expectation would be fulfilled with respect to the tips point of view. Definitely will interact sometime into the detailed session.
Such in-depth knowledge from both eminent speakers.
Yeah. Saurabh is here. Saurabh, you just.
So I would request definitely both the speakers to please visit Jammu once. We will accompany you for sure to the Vaishno Mata. इसके अलावा हमारे पास वैसे भी माता के अलावा कुछ है नहीं. It is a city of temples.
वही सब कुछ है. Saurabh is fortunate. Saurabh ने अपना 100 batch ही conducted in Jammu only. If
yes,
I'm not wrong.
Yes,
Arey,
yes,
Saurabh,
sir. Even
my data
100th, and
handling is
I have been to Jammu 3 times.
my data handling is fine, Saurabh.
Yeah, it is 100, sir. It is
Yes.
120th batch, not 120th batch.
Yeah, yes.
So thank you so much, sir. I would like to present a vote of thanks from my side for giving such an in-depth knowledge of the subject. I wish and I give best wishes to all the aspirants of DCIT who will be giving the exam tomorrow. So thank you so much to both of you, sir.
Thank
you,
you.
thank you, Viniji, for giving us opportunity.
Thank you,
Kapil
Vinay
sir.
ji. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amit ji, if you are there, then many thanks to you also. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Okay, fine. Bye.